Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Ball at the 38-yard line. Nussmeier trying to move some tempo here. Takes the snap, looking, hurls it downfield, left corner of the end zone. Thomas wide open. He's got it. Touchdown, Fighting Tigers.
Make the toss pitch, wanting to throw, and he's got Prescore down the near sideline. Caught at the 15 to the 10 to the 5. Touchdown, Ole Miss.
Tigers take a knee. Mizzou fans, guess what? Eli and the boys have done it again for an 11th time this season. In the Cotton Bowl, Missouri knocks off 7th-ranked Ohio State 14-3.
The slide and grab is made. That's a touchdown catch for Trayshawn Holden, and it took all of 5 seconds. 17 yards right into the heart of the Flames defense, and the Ducks lead it 30-6.
I will go to the shotgun with 5 wide, 3 to the wide side right. Hill takes the snap, delayed blitz, he throws left, it's intercepted. James Pierce down the far sideline to the 20, to the 10, and he'll take it the distance for the Tennessee touchdown on the pick 6.
It's Williams in motion, low snap, Melrose stop. Michigan makes a stand and comes up with a milestone playoff victory.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Shane, do you have us?
Yeah, you're there.
All right. It's a little quiet, knocking off some of the rust. It's been a minute since we
Haven't put the headset on
in
in a while.
I know. It feels a little, it kind of feels like somebody's been sitting in my seat maybe.
I don't know about that.
Good morning.
Although this cushion does look a little lopsided.
You got to be careful there.
A little more right side than left.
Happy? Are you a left side sitter? You lean left a little?
I definitely lean left because when I talk to you, I lean this way.
Yeah, so I probably do the opposite because I kind of am like trying to get us.
Now I'm feeling a little
self-conscious,
seesawy toward you.
Off-balanced.
Yeah. The scale just isn't there. I watched a lot of Prices Right over the break.
Did you?
And, when they try to match like the item with the scale and it doesn't match up, like that's how I feel right now.
I was a huge Prices Right fan when I was a kid.
Big Bob Barker guy.
Oh, obsessed with it. Not as much Drew Carey. I will sometimes watch for the nostalgia, but not the same.
I didn't watch a lot of Bob Barker Price is Right. So
it's a little before
Carey
it's a little
was
before your
probably
time.
my guy.
Yeah.
Although I can understand that because when Pat Sajak, I feel like something just flew in my eye.
You all right?
More inside. So I don't think, and I'm wearing a hat. So the trajectory of something flying into my eye would be crazy. The percentage would be crazy low. When Pat Sajak leaves Wheel of Fortune, that's what's going to do it for me.
Yeah, I don't know that he ever will. I mean,
he is.
That's
leaving.
right.
Ryan Seacrest is taking over.
Oh, come on,
America's sweetheart.
I will say that's like one of the best jobs. Pat Sajak's schedule is like one of the best jobs in the world.
He works 3 months out of the year.
Not even. I think he works like a month a year. They bang out like 200 shows, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's his whole schedule, and he makes.
And it's totally worth it too because all you're doing is playing a game all day.
Yes, and it's millions of dollars. Well, I mean, that's the dream right there.
Although I would wonder how repetitive it gets for him when he's up there on stage and do you think he thinks about trying to say something different or new, or do you think he's just so old now that he doesn't care?
I think he probably mixes it up a little bit.
I would worry that I'm repeating myself.
You've got to
how many shows are you doing a day?
I think they try and knock out like 20 a day. They do it
right, and each show probably takes about 15 minutes because you have to factor in the 15 minutes
commercials
of ads.
And whatever.
So if it's, let's just say they try to hit 3 an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 an hour for 8 hours, 24 shows.
Yeah. And you do that for like a month straight.
And you do it for a month straight. Like that sounds great, but like in those 24 shows, how are you not saying the same thing or like the same joke at some point? Or do you? Because like they can just move the shows.
Yeah, you just move it to a different day.
Like 3 months down the road. And that's the show that he made the same joke 3 months ago on.
That's what I do whenever we're here. I just I make the same joke.
We have Shane.
I'm like, Shane, I need you to move that show to next month. I made that joke already. What we haven't seen is this year's college football playoff matchup, Michigan and Washington.
Did you not see that coming?
No, I mean, we haven't seen it yet. I mean, we haven't seen either of those teams in the final. Those are actually the teams I picked. I thought Alabama, Michigan was probably a coin flip and, went to overtime. That doesn't surprise me. I did think that Alabama maybe had a little bit of an edge because I thought Milroe was playing better than McCarthy going into that game. Obviously, that totally flipped. McCarthy
that
played
defense,
way
that Michigan
yes,
defense,
especially in the
just,
first half.
Oh,
the first half, Michigan dominated that offensive line.
How are you supposed to move the football on that defense?
We'll see if Michael Penix can do it. Because
is that defense comparable to what we've seen out of Georgia in recent years?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't, and that's kind of the thing that you have to take away from that is you look at the way they handled Alabama, your SEC champion. They beat Georgia this year, and Alabama has as much talent and more talent than everyone in the country. If you look at the actual, they do this. I forget who puts it out, but they do a blue chip rating, and basically they do what percentage of your roster is 90 or is 4 and 5 stars, and 90% of Alabama's roster is 4 and 5 stars. 90% 4 and 5 stars, which is the most in the country by like 12 or 13%. I think the next closest is like 78 or 77. So Alabama has as much talent more talent than anyone in the country. And Michigan looked every bit the part. I mean, I think some people worried about, would they be able to hold up physically? Would they be able to hold up speed-wise? And they answered all those questions, I thought, with flying colors. And this is the matchup that I wanted. I thought Washington would beat Texas. I didn't really anticipate for the weirdness of the last minute and a half or so, but
coaching was a little sus for Kalen DeBoer and company there.
Yeah, for that last minute, the clock management, and then obviously you had the kick catch interference, that added to that quite a bit. But you also had
many blunders on special teams.
Yeah, on both games.
Yeah,
right.
Oh my goodness, it was just muff after muff.
Yeah, and then you've had some missed kicks as well. And I will say the one thing that we're probably going to forget about in this Washington game. And not to say that the clock management was good, because I didn't think it was. But if their running back doesn't get injured, you're talking about Texas has 15, 20 seconds from their own 30-yard line or 15-yard line if they don't get the kick-catch interference. And we're not having this discussion about questionable clock management.
Yeah, well, it was avoidable.
It was.
The whole thing was avoidable.
Super avoidable.
All Washington should have done in that moment was take a knee. Your running back was already hurt.
Yeah, he was
obviously shaken up throughout that game. At one point, you saw him hobbling on the sideline, and this was early in the game.
Yeah,
where I don't remember which sideline reporter it was because there were two of them, but she reported that hey, he's still going to fight through this right foot injury.
Yeah, but he's banged up.
He's still going to fight through and play because that's what he wants to do for his team. So you have to kind of it is hard, right? Because if he doesn't get hurt, you're not talking about it today. But the whole thing was avoidable, and you could have put your player in the best position for him to stay healthy rather than have him drive that ball. Do you not have a backup running back that can come in? Maybe you don't trust him enough to hold on to the football.
Thing,
but if it's a ball security thing, the best way to hold on to the football is by giving it to Michael Penix so he can take a knee.
So the only issue I have with the kneeling down, because I understand the argument, but Texas still had 2 timeouts.
You say 4 seconds, maybe?
Well, I think what they were trying to do was get a first down.
Yeah, you can put the game away with a first down.
So if you get a first down, the game's over. And we saw Washington be hyper aggressive the entire game, maybe to their detriment a little bit early in the fourth quarter when they threw a flea flicker or tried to throw a flea flicker.
Got a little cute.
And you're like, hey, I don't, after the fumble, right? Where it looked like they were really going for a kill shot. And it's like, hey, it's not there. Just run your offense, right? And so they were hyper aggressive the entire game. I understand saying, hey, we've been moving the ball all night. Let's put it away. Let's get the first down. Because they did still have 2 times.
How were they moving the ball, though?
Well, passing it, right?
Yeah, they were moving the ball through the air.
Although I will say in the third quarter especially, they did get that running game moving a little bit. Because
but then it stopped again.
Yes. So but if you throw in that situation, people are really
that's why you don't throw it all.
Right.
So I'm still on the side of taking a knee. Maybe take a chance on first down.
Yeah.
If you get 6 yards, then maybe run it again.
Sure.
But they got stuffed on first down.
They did. Yeah.
And then on second down, you got stuffed. And all night long, it was you run the ball up the gut, you're getting stuffed by this Texas D-line.
So the one thing that I will say I wish I would have seen differently was on third down, instead of throwing it to try and pick it up, just run it again, make Texas burn the extra timeout. Like, that was the issue I had with the play calling. I don't have a problem with them not kneeling it because you want to make them, you want to try and get the first down. I totally understand that. The issue I had was, okay, stick with that plan, run it one more time, and then make Texas burn that last timeout, because then you're in a position where they don't have any timeouts. They are going to be backed up. They've got a long way to go. They have to get a touchdown. As it was, it turned into a thrilling ending, probably more exciting than it needed to be.
Hold on. Can I do this real fast?
Yeah. Well, oh man,
how much PTSD did that insert into brains last night?
As soon as it was happening.
But for those on the radio, I'm holding up one finger right now,
one,
like Mac Brown.
Yeah, like Mac Brown, like Steve Sarkisian. At the end, he goes, "Hey, give me one more." And listen, and it was the right call. Like, there was a second left when the ball was touched out of bounds. I get that. But the moment it happened, I just go, "Oh God, not like this. Not like this, man." Like, as soon as that happened, I was like, "Oh, he's going to throw a touchdown."
And of all teams, it's Texas,
right?
Like, that's how
Texas.
The story was written. Like, I feel like I've seen this movie before. That's what I had going in my mind.
It is Texas trying to go back to a national championship game for the first time since that happened, and every Nebraska fan's just sitting there, like, "You really? We're doing this again?" And again, it was the right call, but I did not. I was fully prepared to be furious in that moment. Luckily, Washington made a play. I say luckily, I was openly rooting for Washington. I didn't want Texas to be anywhere near a national championship or anything like that, because, listen, you think Texas fans are insufferable now.
Texas is a powerful player.
Give them a little bit of success, and I don't need any of that going into the national championship game.
At what point will this Washington team be taken seriously? Like, I want to present that question nationally.
Yeah.
Because if we look back, and I don't remember what the line was when Oregon played Washington at Washington middle of the year.
Yeah, I don't remember the first game. But in the Pac-12 championship, it was double digits.
Yeah. It was, I think it closed at 9, but it opened at 11.
Yeah, it opened at 11. I think it got to 11.5, and it spent most of the week at 10.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so regardless of where it closed, it was way too high.
2-score game,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, people thought Vegas thought Washington was going to get blown out in that game. And then I called it a trap, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, I'll go into your trap. Washington's winning this game.
On top of that, they're the 2 seed against Texas, a 12-1 Texas team, and they're still 4-point dogs.
Yeah.
So, and against Michigan, I'm not saying they have to be projected as the favorite.
No.
But all season long, this team has been overlooked.
Respect. Yeah.
Overlooked. And they're 13-0. They had the Heisman runner-up, who, in a lot of minds, should have been the Heisman Trophy winner.
Mine included.
At what point are you going to say, hey, this is a pretty complete team? It's not just Michael Penix and some good wide receivers that are going to go in the first round. No, this defense is pretty elite too.
Not just the defense. This was literally voted the best offensive line in the country. This was, I believe they won the award for best offensive line in the country. They took a Texas defense that had been, especially that defensive line, that had been menacing the entire year. And did Penix get sacked last night?
I don't remember.
I don't think Penix got sacked last night.
He almost did a couple of times, and then all of a sudden it was a 10-yard gain.
Yeah, he kind of Houdini'd his way out of it a couple times. But this was, for the most part, they kept him real clean. If they didn't win the award, they were finalists for it. I'm having trouble remembering. But they give out an award for the best offensive line group in the country, and they were at least finalists for that award. And they kept Penix clean all night against an elite Texas defensive line. They opened up enough holes in the running game to keep that Texas defense honest a little bit, to allow some of the play action and misdirection and that kind of stuff to work. And you bring up a good point with them, both with the Heisman and with them getting overlooked, is the problem with a lot of the national college football media is that they just don't see as much West Coast football. They just don't.
Or maybe Northwest.
Sure, yeah. Like maybe you
no one's remembering the Washingtons of the world in the national championship game.
Yeah, maybe you're watching USC because Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley and whatever. But Washington, this used to happen with Oregon all the time too. Washington just largely got forgotten. Whether it was in the Heisman voting, which I mean, we can do the Heisman thing real quick here because
Ravi's still mad.
I am still mad. Michael Penix is the best player in the country. I'm not even sorry.
You don't have to convince me.
He was the best player in the country all year. He was the most important player in the country all year. Yes, I understand Jaden Daniels had really cool numbers. Like awesome numbers.
Pretty awesome stats.
That's terrific. So did every Texas Tech quarterback ever.
How many ranked opponents did LSU
I think they beat Missouri. I think that was it.
Oh, really? Just Missouri, huh?
How
many teams did they play? At least 4.
A bunch of them.
At
right?
least 4. And he sat out of his bowl game yesterday.
They didn't. Those numbers were so meaningless. They didn't win a game that mattered all year. The entire season. Washington ran through a loaded Pac-12. And they went and won every single game that mattered. They needed him, and he went out and won every single game that mattered and put up eye-popping numbers while he was at it. Legitimately, if that dude is playing in the eastern half of the country, he is the Heisman winner. I guarantee you that. Jaden Daniels didn't do, listen, the numbers were great. He didn't do anything that mattered this year. Not a single thing. At some point, that has to count in the award. At some point. And I'm not saying it has to be on the best player on the best team or whatever, because I advocated for Johnny Manziel when he won the Heisman. He did things that matter. He knocked off Alabama at a time where that didn't seem.
He had a Heisman moment.
He had a Heisman moment, and he did things that mattered in the season. He beat teams that mattered. Ndamukong Suh is another really good example. He did things that mattered. He was the story of college football that year. Jaden Daniels will be largely forgotten as far as this season is concerned. He might go on to have a great NFL career, but he might as well, in terms of college numbers, he might as well be Sonny Cumbie or BJ Simons or Cliff Kingsbury or whoever else, or, Bailey Zappi or whoever you want that's put up ridiculous numbers. Our guy Case Keenum. Pick a number. Dave Klingler. Go back. You want to go real far back to Houston in the 90s. These numbers don't matter. You can manufacture numbers in college football now in a way that can be really deceiving. You have to actually watch the games, and it was clear, both from the disrespect that Washington got in the lines from Vegas throughout the year and in the disrespect Michael Penix got in the Heisman, that I don't think a lot of these people are watching the games. They're maybe looking at box scores and be like, oh, Washington snuck by again. They must not be playing great football. Try again. Washington's been playing great football all year. The Pac-12
quarterback.
Yeah, watch his quarterback.
Watch him throw a football.
He's one of the prettiest balls.
I've ever seen.
Especially the deep ball.
I've ever seen.
Those, I understand his receivers catch everything, which is awesome. Not just a dude.
But the ball's thrown in the right spot.
The ball is, you couldn't place it in a better spot half the time.
I don't know if I saw one duck from him all year.
Not a duck. He threw one last night that was overthrown that he should have hit.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been a touchdown.
Maybe 2. He may have thrown 2 overthrown balls. Because
one of them was pressure. One of them was pressure that he was just getting rid of.
Okay, so there was one clean pocket.
There was one clean pocket where he just missed, right? There's one where he was just getting rid of, and it was it was in a similar spot on the field, actually, going to the corner of the end zone.
Miss a lot of those throws, though.
He doesn't, even under pressure, right? This dude was the best player in the country all year. And I don't know how you fix it unless you just move Heisman voting till the end of January.
And you know what? I think that's just the conversation that needs to be had. I don't think we need to sit here and say, oh, Michael Penix was the biggest snub in history, or I don't think we need to say that Michael Penix should have, if things were changed, should have won the Heisman today, because who knows? The college football voters may still have it as Jaden Daniels.
But at least if it's after this game, I know they watched.
It has impact.
And I know they watched him at least.
And you know what? maybe as well, and I think the 12-team playoff will have something to say about this too, but maybe you won't have guys sit out of bowl games if the Heisman Trophy is at the end of the season.
Yeah, if it's on the line, if it matters to them.
Would Jaden Daniels have sat out against Wisconsin if he was up for the Heisman Trophy and it wasn't awarded yet? I don't think so. Because these are the points in time where all eyes are on you.
Absolutely.
Everybody is watching. Whether they care about your team or not, you're watching on December 17th when Wyoming is playing Toledo. You're watching on December 31st or January 1st when LSU is playing Wisconsin. Those are when eyes are on you. If it's an award that is at the end of a season, you won't have conversations like this where, as you put it, the most important player in college football this season has been Michael Penix Jr.
Absolutely.
Is going to the national championship game, has done every bit of what has been asked of him, leads college football in passing yards this season, and is, just kicked to the curb because some other guy had a lot of rushing numbers?
Well, and you can make an argument, and I will. So Wisconsin is probably LSU's second best win of the season, I think.
And he didn't even play.
After Missouri. What did Garrett Nussmeier do? 395 yards, 3 touchdowns. So maybe it's not Jaden Daniels.
It's pretty good numbers.
Like, Jaden Daniels is really talented. Don't get me wrong. Maybe.
Now, that LSU defense lost a lot of games for that team.
They did, for sure.
And Washington's defense is top-notch.
Yeah, stellar, right?
So that has a factor into what their record looks like.
But against a top half opponent on their schedule, Garrett Nussmeier went out and did exactly the same thing, minus the rushing yards, that Jaden Daniels went out and did. So
talk about the story. Like, Jaden Daniels is a great story, like going from Arizona State to LSU.
Absolutely.
But how about Michael Penix overcoming 2 ACLs?
Not just 2 ACLs. All 4 seasons at Indiana were ended by injury. 2 ACLs, 2 shoulders. He comes back last year, performs well. Comes back this year, not only performs well, but also leads Washington to a national title game.
And what if they win? What if they win and he performed? Like, what if he plays out of his mind, which I think he will?
Yeah, what if he has the exact same game?
I think he'll have a really nice game.
What if he has the exact same game that he had against against Texas?
I'm going to be scratching my head, wondering why there wasn't an extra trophy in his cabinet.
Yeah, it's like, why is that guy not the Heisman Trophy winner? Could we get an explanation there? Because you can't. There's not a good reason. You cannot give me a good reason.
But kudos to him, and Kalen DeBoer for sticking together after leaving Indiana and building something at Washington, because what they've done over the past 2 years has been incredibly special.
It's incredible. And coming up next, I actually want to talk about Kalen DeBoer, because I'm obsessed with this dude. I have been for a while.
Yeah, every time we do something coach related on this show, Ravi's favorite coach outside of Matt Rule is Kalen DeBoer.
I'm obsessed with Kalen DeBoer. I want to ask you a question about him next. Coming up on the show, though, at 8 o'clock, we're going to talk to Bill Bender, college football writer for the Sporting News. We will talk to Scott Eklund. He covers Washington football. Our guy Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. And then we will wrap up the show with Anthony Broome, who covers Michigan football. We got winners here on the show today, and we will continue talking to them.
Khaled.
All we do is win. Another one. Another segment coming up here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's Andrew Rogers. I'm Ravi Lulla. Happy New Year. We're back, ladies and gentlemen, with more here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Yeah, man, just keeping a 1-0 mindset. You know, that's what it's always been about all year. Yeah, we're going to celebrate this win, you know, but we're going to have a quick turnaround. You got to be ready for the national championship. We're going to be playing a good team. But, man, it's been amazing. You know, it's just everybody just collectively just continue to believe and, you know, continue to trust the process. You know, that's the thing about us. You know, I feel like each and every player on this team, you know, we fell in love with the process, you know, and I've said it since I think it was around fall camp, that our goal is to win the national championship. Some people probably didn't believe us. You know, we have the opportunity to do that. We're not going to get distracted and forget about that goal. You know, obviously this was a step towards it, you know, and it's given us the opportunity to be able to play in that game. We're still motivated. We still got more things we want to accomplish, man. And that natty is right here in front of us. And, you know, our focus is going to be on that, and we're going to be ready for the game.
Welcome back into Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the H&H Chevrolet stage, recapping a terrific night of college football with the college football semifinals last night. And it left me with a question about our guy, Kalen DeBoer. Maybe my guy, our guy. You're a Kalen DeBoer fan, right?
How can you not be a Kalen DeBoer fan? I may not be a super fan.
like some people on in the stream right
but
now.
He's a great mind. Gosh, he is such an offensive guru. He's so impressive to watch.
He really is. And the other thing that I really appreciate about him, and man, I think they showed his record at all head coaching stops, and it's like 113-11. Now, a lot of those are coming at a lower level at Sioux Falls, University of Sioux Falls, which was NAI.
Still have to win those games.
Yeah, still have to win. Got 3 national titles in 5 years, which is pretty good. I don't know if you do the math there.
1, 2, 3. Oh, 3 and then 2 more. So he's got 1 more than his wow. That's
pretty good.
3 out of 5. That's great.
That's pretty good.
Carry the 2.
He is just an incredible winner, an incredible offensive mind. And I've been if Nebraska's coaching cycle had happened a little bit later, because I didn't think you could hire him after just 2 years at Fresno State and 1 year at Washington. If for whatever reason they had either kept Scott Frost for God knows why, or if they had decided to go with Mickey Joseph or whatever, right? And it didn't work out. If we were a couple more years down the line, I really think Kalen DeBoer would have been the choice, because he's got Midwestern roots. He's from South Dakota originally, obviously coached at Sioux Falls. And he is now, would he have taken the job? I don't know, because obviously he's in a really good spot there at Washington now. But that dude is one of the best coaches in the country. And I was thinking last night, how many guys in the country do you take over Kalen DeBoer? Because I think the list keeps getting shorter and shorter. And the question is
it didn't start very big either.
No, right? It didn't start, especially for me, it did not start like a very long list.
Well, after what he did last year,
yes.
he was what, top 10?
For me, certainly. Probably closer to top 25 for most people, because they weren't probably paying a ton of attention to Fresno State and what he was doing there. But
even in his first year at Washington, is what I'm kind of alluding to. Is I mean, he's maybe top 10, top 15.
Yeah, and so you look at his age now. So there's 2 different ways to approach this question, right? You're talking about now moving forward, or you need a coach for 1 year. I'm talking about long term. So for me,
I'll even take him for 1 year.
No, for sure. But if you're talking long term, you're probably start eliminating some of the older guys.
Right.
Like if you're talking about, hey, I want this coach for 5 to 10 years. I mean, is Saban even coaching for 5 to 10 years?
No.
I mean, he's in his
72,
early 70s, right? So I would maybe say he's coaching at 77. Is he coaching at 82? Probably not. Right. So if you want a long-term guy, maybe you take DeBoer even over a Saban, which again, that's going to get cut out and people take it out of context. But if you're talking about a long-term guy as a coach, I don't know how long the list is ahead of Kalen DeBoer. So let's do a little exercise right here. Kalen DeBoer, Lincoln Riley.
Well, at the start of the season, I'd probably say Lincoln Riley.
I think everybody would have.
Now I would say Kalen DeBoer.
I agree. Kalen DeBoer or Jim Harbaugh?
See, this one's tough.
This one's really tough.
Well, because of everything that's taking place with Jim Harbaugh, and I'm sure we'll get into it.
Yeah.
With hey, he may go to the NFL, or he may stay at Michigan, or hey, he's got all of this.
There still might be NCAA penalties.
Well, he said, well, that's what I mean. He's got a lot of Gucci behind him. I don't know if
baggage. I don't know if it's Louis like Dion, but
yeah, that's why I said Gucci, because it can't be Louis, because Dion's got all the Louis.
He's got the
I would take, just because, and you know what, he was a Chicago Bear, and I can't believe I'm saying this, just because I don't like Jim Harbaugh and how he's been handling his business, I would take Kalen DeBoer.
And I think that's one of the tougher ones.
If you said Kalen DeBoer or Kirby Smart, I'd take Kirby Smart.
Yeah, Kirby Smart's younger. He's got the track record. He's got the 2 national titles. So that's one guy. We've got Kirby Smart so far. Kalen DeBoer or Ryan Day?
Another tough one, because Ryan Day is super successful and always pumps out some pretty nice recruiting classes.
He inherited a much better situation than Kalen DeBoer.
But he still made the most of that situation.
Certainly did.
I'd probably say Ryan Day today.
But not
today.
Not by a ton.
Not by a
Like
ton.
60-40?
It's pretty close.
Like 60-40?
It's very close. It's like a 60-40. It would not be higher than a 65-35.
Okay, so we've got Kirby Smart and Ryan Day. Mike Norvell.
I'd take Kalen DeBoer. I like Mike Norvell a ton.
Mike Norvell's really good, but
I'd take Kalen DeBoer.
I think I would agree there. Let's see. Young guys, who am I missing here? I mean, obviously you got Matt Rule. That's
Dan Lanning. I'd take Kalen DeBoer.
Ooh, Dan Lanning's a good one.
Yeah, I'd still take Kalen DeBoer.
I think I would too.
Just because of the success DeBoer has had over Lanning.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lanning,
but Lanning's a great prodigy. Right, he's a great
yes.
coaching prodigy. Came from a great tree. But I'd still take Kalen DeBoer today.
Lanning might be the second best, and he's a lot younger than, because I think he's still in his 30s.
Is he?
I think Dan Lanning is like 39, so he's like a decade younger.
You know, I got to tell you, like Nick Saban's 72, right? He doesn't look 72.
No, he looks a
Pete
lot.
Carroll, 72.
Yeah.
Doesn't look doesn't move like a 72-year-old should.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to coaches, that's why I can't ever like figure out how old they are, because whether they're 72 or 37, as you pointed out for Dan Lanning, they all just like look the same over the years. Like Matt Rule's not going to change in my eyes. No matter how much gray he gets, he's still going to look like the same Matt Rule that was coaching at Temple.
You know what's hilarious is, so Nick Saban, Pete Carroll, and Bill Belichick are all the same age, and Belichick looks ancient.
Yes, he does. He's somebody that looks like he didn't age well.
Yeah, especially when you go back and see clips of him like in the early Brady years, and you're like, oh man, because in my head I'm like, oh, he's kind of always looked like this. He really hasn't. He used to look a lot younger. I'm like, oh man, he's kind of decrepit. Like he doesn't look good. But you look at Pete Carroll.
I think it's really just how they move, though.
Yeah,
like 72-year-old men should not move like Pete Carroll.
Yeah, that dude moves like he's 45.
Yeah,
it's wild.
So I just can't ever figure out.
If he dyed his hair, I think he was 40.
Hey, if he took Just for Men, he shaves off 15 years.
Sprinkled it in a little bit there.
Yeah, maybe touch of gray. Who knows?
So we got sponsors here. We got
I don't know.
We've got Ryan Day, Kirby Smart. We passed on Dan Lanning, although I think it's close. We passed on Mike Norvell, although I think that's reasonably close as well. Those are kind of the ones that come to mind as far as young guys.
Where does Eli Drinkwitz sit for you today? Like, I don't think he's Kalen DeBoer yet, but
I definitely
with how he turned around Mizzou from being, what were they, like preseason 9, preseason 6 in the SEC? Something low.
6, I think.
Were they 6?
Yeah.
The way he turned around that team in 1 year, plus they're going to carry over. Like, the only person they're really losing is Cody Schrader at running back.
Mm-hmm.
They get Luther Burden back. They'll have Brady Cook again with a full season, and Brady Cook looked very, very good this year. So I think Drink's done a really nice job recruiting as well.
He has.
He kind of like jumps into the conversation because of his age as well.
Yeah, he's only 40.
But he's not Kalen DeBoer, and he's not Dan Lanning.
Yeah, he's a little bit lower for me because this was his first like breakout year at Missouri. They were basically 500 every year before that, 5-5, 6-6, 6-6, and then bowl games made them 6-7 both those years. But I really feel like because he's only had the one breakout year, I can't really put him in that category yet. Give me another one, and we can start having more of a conversation. But like Norvell is a good example here. He had the success at Memphis, had the breakout year last year, followed it up this year with Florida State. That's why he's more in that conversation than Drinkwitz for me. But
hey, if Mizzou repeats,
sure,
and maybe three-peats their season this year, Drink will be in the conversation for one of the best young coaches.
Being in that Lanning Norvell conversation for sure. That's the deal on Kalen DeBoer. I'm obsessed. I can't help it. We will get to more college football playoff and I don't know, whatever
coaching
else is
talk.
going on. Coaching talk here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
29 yards. Polk stayed with it. Made the catch. 29 yards.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, H&H Chevrolet stage. Andrew Rogers here with me. I'm Ravi Lulla. We saw some elite talent on display last night. You can go see some elite talent on display January 24th at the CHI Health Center. It's pro time in Nebraska. The Omaha Supernovas hit the court for the first ever Pro Volleyball Federation match on January 24th against the Atlanta Vibe at the CHI Health Center. First service set for 7 p.m.
Supernovas are Vibe killers on January 24th.
That's right. They'll kill the Atlanta Vibe. They won't kill your vibe. Secure your season and single match tickets at supernovas.com. As I mentioned, world-class talent on display with the Supernovas and the Atlanta
all
Vibe
over the country
for the first ever match of the Pro Volleyball Federation. Supernovas roster has NCAA champions, All-Americans, Olympians. We're talking about the best of the best in volleyball. Join the volleyball movement sweeping across the country and see your Major League Volleyball team, the Omaha Supernovas. Again, supernovas.com for tickets, both season and single game tickets available.
Ravi, bump.
Set.
Kill.
Boom. Got him.
Because they're going to kill it.
They're going to kill it. Those are your Omaha Supernovas. You'll be hearing more about them as we get closer and closer to that first
Are we talking
match.
to Coach this week?
I believe so. I believe we're talking to the head coach this week. I think
he's double checking the schedule.
Well,
right
we're
now.
talking to somebody.
We're talking to somebody. We will
I think we're talking to Coach this week.
We might be. We'll get you updated on
Yeah,
that.
we got Coach Sellett for Thursday.
Thursday. There you go. Looking
right.
forward to it. Speaking of coaches, we were talking about Kalen DeBoer in the last segment. Another coach that's going to be playing for a national championship is a guy I wanted to talk about as well. Jim Harbaugh had a tumultuous year, I think is the nice way to put it.
I think he had a pretty smooth sailing year. You know what? If he was reflecting on the year that was 2023, stress-free is how he would probably describe it.
Well, I mean, he only had to coach half of his schedule, so maybe it was a little stress-free.
You know, he made a lot of money. They're in the national championship game. He didn't have to do much. Negative press just out the window. Nothing was there. He's
one of the stranger storylines from the college football season for obvious reasons, right? You have the NCAA investigation that he gets suspended right off the bat. Nothing to do with Connor Stallions.
It was only a cheeseburger.
Connor Stallions wasn't even a twinkle in our eye at that point at the start of the season when he's suspended for 3 games for, I believe it was violating COVID practices, whether it was either in practice or recruiting or both. I don't remember. Something to do with the COVID rules that he broke, and so he gets suspended, right? Then the gift that kept on giving mid-season, the Connor Stallions story.
Can we call it a saga?
The saga.
I prefer saga.
The Connor Stallions saga, where he obviously there was the illegal taping, scouting, all that kind of stuff with Connor Stallions. He gets suspended by the Big Ten for that. You still have the NCAA investigation hanging over his head from that part as well as from the stuff earlier in the year, because that was a self-imposed suspension. So the NCAA could still drop the hammer on him if he really wanted to, which leads to the question of what's next for Jim Harbaugh, because with all this hanging over his head, you have to imagine another suspension's not out of the question going into next year. Obviously,
especially if they win.
Yes.
If they win the national title, people will be calling
clamoring
for a suspension.
Clamoring for a suspension, right? And so this is a super odd situation because you have a guy who is wildly successful, who very well could have another suspension for next year. It's not out of the question that Michigan has some sanctions as well, although I can't imagine they'll be too severe. Probably a small scholarship reduction, something like that. But which with NIL, this means a lot less than it used to. But then you've got this other part of Jim Harbaugh where he's constantly been flirting with the NFL, or the NFL has been flirting with him, depending on which side of the story you want to believe. So I'm sitting there last night and I go, are we one game away from never seeing Jim Harbaugh coach at Michigan again?
I don't think so.
You think he's back?
I think he's back. And here's why. Michigan would not throw this 10-year extension at him if they were overly worried about the sanctions the NCAA will bring. I think Michigan believes this will be more of a Bill Self situation where, like, yes, the level 1 infraction is the threat, but it ends up being like a 2 or a 3. And I think that's what's going to happen here with Jim Harbaugh as well. It's not going to be something long-term, because if it were long-term, why would Michigan throw a huge chunk of money to lock him up and then not have him coach the team, let's just say it all next year?
So I don't think it has to do with the NCAA stuff for me. For me, it has to do with, I think they threw the huge extension at him to try and convince him not to go to the NFL.
Well, and that's a huge piece of it, because if the whole point of the extension was you can't listen to offers that come your way in 2024. Plus, you have this huge transition taking place in the conference. Michigan doesn't want to have to restart things while the conference is in so much changeover. You still want to be the top dog, so why not lock in your man for a long period of time so that this change isn't as rough on your program?
So let me throw this at you, okay? let's say, for whatever reason, there is some sort of rather damning evidence against Jim Harbaugh, whether it's for the COVID restriction violations or whether it's for the Connor Stallion stuff. And he knows this. He knows what's out there, right?
You're innocent until proven guilty.
Well, you might be about to be proven guilty, Jim. The question for me is, does he want to go through that? Even if Michigan would stand by him. He seems like a guy that doesn't like to suffer who he believes are fools. He doesn't seem like a guy that wants to deal with other people's nonsense. If he has an opportunity, because I think the contract, I believe, states that after this year, he can't go after NFL jobs. I think he's allowed this year, if I read the story correctly.
It's either that or the extension is you can't.
Yeah, because the extension doesn't kick in until I think next year.
Yes, correct.
So this season is his last opportunity to go after an NFL job.
And it would low-key be the right opportunity. It's the perfect season for this all to take place.
Yes.
Because
they're wildly successful.
And if he wins a national championship, he succeeded at Michigan, and you're going to go down in history as well, he's a Michigan poster child already, but as there'll be a statue up in front of the stadium of Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, and that's not an exaggeration.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure there's not, but it's not exactly.
Next to Connor Stallions.
I'll say Connor Stallions is actually right behind him, whispering in his ear with a pair of binoculars around his neck, being like, "Hey, this is the next play, coach."
Wearing a Washington t-shirt.
I'll say the statue is actually just a boar on. It's a very big statue. It's Harbaugh on one sideline,
and then the
entire
Washington team on the other side.
And Connor Stallions is in there,
but they're across the street
wearing his very low hat, his sunglasses at night, in his Washington shirt that he bought at Dick's Sporting Goods, and it's just like, "Yep, it's fine, no big deal." No, but so the statue is not an exaggeration, because as prolific as Michigan has been, they have exactly half of a national title in 80 years. They have one half. They haven't won a full-on undisputed national title since the 40s. This is one of the most premier programs in college football.
Blue blood.
I believe, the only team that has 1,000 wins in their history. They have half of a national title since World War II. That's it. So you're looking at a guy that if he's able to bring that home to Michigan, that he is untouchable forever, right? But here's where the big but comes into place, right? Jim Harbaugh loves him and he cannot lie. You've got the perfect way to go out if you win a national title. You've got potential sanctions coming from the NCAA that maybe you don't want to deal with. And you've got this extension kicking in that no longer allows you to pursue NFL jobs. So if it's going to happen, it's happening this year.
And it's all about if he wants to stay in Ann Arbor or not. Like, ultimately, like, do you want to die in Ann Arbor?
Do you want to be a Michigan man for life?
Okay. Don't think back here. I don't want you to do. I want this to be like an instant
gut reaction.
Got it. Gut response. Okay. Because it's not a hard question.
Okay.
How old is Jim Harbaugh? Don't think
60.
So yes, he's 60 years old, which is, wow. Right on the nose. It's crazy. So last night I'm looking up like how old Jim Harbaugh is, and I'm like, man, 60 seems like do I want a 60-year-old head coach in the NFL? Sorry for those that just saw me punch my microphone. I'm still mad about how things shook out last night.
So angry.
With the 1 second and all that jazz. I was like, man, that seems really old. But then I was doing my research, and I'm like, Pete Carroll was 60 when he left USC to go to the Seahawks?
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe it isn't as crazy as I think. And now I'm seeing like the age of a bunch of coaches, like long-term coaches in the NFL. I'm like, man, these guys,
they're either
these guys go the distance, right?
A lot younger or a lot older than you think.
And the other point to this too is Jim Harbaugh. It's not like he didn't have success at the NFL.
That's the key there. Like, he was very, very good
in
with
what,
the
like
49ers.
4 seasons.
Yes,
he
won 3 NFC title games, and I think his worst year was 8-8. He was really good with the 49ers.
I do have a chart here. 44-19, a winning percentage of nearly 70%.
Really, really.
He can find the right situation. It doesn't have to be Chicago where he once threw the football. Maybe it's in LA with a really nice young quarterback,
Chargers,
some good pieces, and with a mind like Harbaugh versus Staley, you can win games.
Coming up next, Bill Bender, Sporting News, college football.
We will be back. We will be back. Sports Radio.
McCarthy packs the pass. Pass time. Over the middle. Gets it complete. First down, Michigan. Morris inside the 10. Striding to the end zone. Touchdown for Michigan.
Snap to Penix. Made the catch. 29 yards. Made the
We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
McCarthy packs the pass. Pass time. Over the middle. Gets it complete. First down, Michigan. Morris inside the 10. Striding to the end zone. Did he get there? Yes. Tyler Morris with a 38-yard touchdown for Michigan.
snap to Penix. Four-man rush. Pressure coming. Penix spots a receiver. Fires. Tipped in the air and caught by Polk in the end zone. Jalen Polk stayed with it. Made the catch, 29 yards.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. You can find us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook as well, streaming live. Join us in those YouTube comments as well. That's Andrew Rogers. I'm Ravi Lulla. Quick reminder, using your seatbelt saves lives and prevents injuries, but only if it is properly worn. Make it click. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is Bill Bender. Bill is a national college football writer for the Sporting News. Bill, how are you this morning?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. You get a little bit of sleep after those barn burners last night?
No, but, that's part of the. I mean, you didn't bring me on to lie, so not really. But that's okay. I mean, this is that stretch where from now through January 10th, I'll be complaining when they're not playing, so it's not that big of a deal.
For sure, Bill. As you're watching those games last night, especially the two. I mean, it was a full day of games on January 1st, as we're used to seeing, but especially as we're watching those semifinal games last night. Where did those games rank in terms of your just back-to-back in terms of your covering college football? Because very rarely it seems like do games of that magnitude live up to the billing, and both of them did yesterday.
I mean, that's what I'm writing about now is like, had this happened more consistently in the 14 playoff, there wouldn't have been a call for the 12-teamer. That's kind of my argument.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had close games, we had new blood, we had classics, we had the Rose Bowl that was the second. Because remember, Texas USC wasn't a Rose Bowl, it was the title game.
Mm-hmm.
That was the second best game at the Rose Bowl I've ever watched.
It was just unbelievable.
Well,
the amount of talent on that field was on both sides was just incredible.
What was the first one, Bill?
Texas USC in the 41-30.
Oh, okay, sure.
Game.
Okay.
But that's not technically a Rose Bowl, right? So, my editor last night was saying, Georgia, Oklahoma was great. It wasn't better than that game.
No.
Because I'm one of those guys that, 51-45 doesn't necessarily always do it for me. When you have a 27-20 game where there were mistakes and you're literally hanging on your seat wondering which play is going to decide this game, and the theater between Saban and Harbaugh and everything else, it was an incredible game.
So, Bill, just immediate reaction then to what you saw. You take Washington, you take Michigan. How do you think the national championship plays out in your eyes?
It's going to be tough to beat Michigan. It'll depend, though. I mean, Michael Penix obviously is amazing. The receivers he has are incredible, and it's going to be a styles game. One of those styles that, Washington's going to be able to throw it around, but are they going to be able to stop Michigan running the football? I mean, they almost blew that game last night. So to me, it's just going to be tough to beat the Wolverines. I think the momentum, it does remind me of the first year of the playoff when they beat Alabama. I blow out Oregon. I know this isn't a perfect comparison, but I kind of feel like the same thing's going to happen.
Bill, where do you think Washington doesn't get enough credit? Because obviously Penix and the receivers, as you mentioned, get all the headlines, but they're pretty good in a lot of areas. Where's the one area you think maybe they don't get enough credit?
Where their school is located, honestly. Like if this was or an SEC school like Florida, we'd be talking about it all the time. It's because they're tucked up in that part of the country. Their offense is amazing. It really is. It's multiple. It's fun to watch. They've got edge rushers. They've won 21 straight games. So it's not like this just happened. I mean, Kellen DeBoer has done an incredible job there building that program, and I look for that to continue.
Bill, you had mentioned the 12-team playoff in a previous answer, and, it's a personal peeve, but I know many others dislike the opting out of players in bowl games. and it's not a lack of understanding why they do it. I just wish they wouldn't. I thought Dennis Dodd wrote a pretty nice piece about that just a couple of days ago about the impact of opt-outs in the future. And I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Do you think that the 12-team playoff will have guys second-guessing opting out, or at least, lower the numbers?
I mean, what's stopping a kid from, if they're in a 5-12 matchup where they're 17-point underdogs, and being like, I'm not doing that. I mean, I think things to keep in mind as we move into the 12-team era is we might be doing it a little just a touch too soon because of all of the big picture issues in college football. So now you're going to throw a 12-team playoff out there. Are you really ready for it? And I don't know that the sport is. I mean, I'm kind of writing about that now. I'm wondering in 5 years if we're going to be like, well, maybe we should have went to 8. And it's because of nights like last night where you want to preserve that you have that weekend, that you have a sport that I'm kind of compared the 14 playoff. I said, to me, it's in between. It's better than the men's and women's Final Four in basketball. To me, it is. Some other people might disagree. It's not quite as captivating as the NFL Conference Championship weekend, which is the best weekend in sports.
Bill, what are some of those challenges that you would have liked to have seen college football address before moving to a 12-team format?
I mean, they got to fix the transfer portal calendar. You're asking about opt-outs. Well, Murphy didn't play in last night's game.
Yeah.
When yours was banged up, so when your backup quarterback can leave before the season, before the play, and rightfully so. I'm not blaming Malik for anything. I mean, that's just allows for that to happen. They need to fix the college football calendar. They're not going to be able to fix opt-outs. Kids are going to opt out. That's happen. You need to unless there's some sort of revenue sharing with NIL, in terms of not even NIL, just revenue sharing and those kind of things where it's almost like a contract. You have to play in the game. And still, what's the intent? So, we're creating more games, and it'll be fun. I'm not complaining about more football. I'm never going to do that. I'm just saying, I'm surprised if the 12-team model isn't quite as good as what we have now.
Bill, we just got off talking about Jim Harbaugh and his future, and Michigan has done everything in their power, and deservingly so, to stay 13-0, get to the national championship game, even if there's a lot of people out there that don't like how they did it, including me. But that's beside the point. Jim Harbaugh is up for a national championship and turning Michigan around. But when thinking about his future, if you were a betting man today, would you expect if Michigan wins the national championship that he goes to the NFL just to avoid anything that may come with the NCAA if he were to stay at Michigan?
No idea, honestly, because again, you're dealing with Jim Harbaugh, and he's so unpredictable, and he's unpredictable. Press conferences, he deflects questions. You heard him do that last night on the podium. That's what he does. So I could see a 50-50. I'll put it to you that way. I think if they win the national championship, the emotion of that could carry over, and he could say, I'm staying. And, but if he leaves, there's nobody at Michigan that's going to be mad. Look what he's done for that program. They've won 3 Big Ten championships that dominated the sport in the conference. They flipped the rivalry with Ohio State. Yeah, there's controversy. I'm kind of the other way on that. It's like, other than, and we don't have to get back into that, but other than Connor Stallions being on the sideline, potentially at the Central Michigan game, the rest of that stuff doesn't really bother me.
We're talking with Bill Bender of the Sporting News. Let's go to the other coach in this national championship game, Kalen DeBoer. I asked Andrew this earlier. How short is the list of coaches in the country right now you would take over Kalen DeBoer?
He's a winner, and he won at Sioux Falls. He's been able to install a system that works. His work with quarterbacks is incredible. Great offensive mind, fun offensive team to watch, and he doesn't have to leave because they're going to be the big stage at the Big Ten. So he doesn't have to, like I said, some of this bias around is the fact that they're not in a big conference. They're in a market that I know it's a big market out there, but you know, how many? I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of people that probably didn't stay up at the end of that game last night because it was. So that's another problem. Why didn't we kick these games off a little bit early? I would have done the first semifinal at noon, so everybody could watch these games. But I guess that's 9 a.m. on the West Coast. But the college football games are way too long, and that's yet another issue we have to solve.
Bill, I want to step away from the national championship game for a moment. I want to look back on some other bowl games that we saw. The one that was really disappointing, and I think disappointing for a lot of people, was the Ohio State-Mizzou game that took place just a few days before the New Year's Six Bowls. How concerned are you if you're Ohio State going forward after watching their two young quarterbacks struggle in that Cotton Bowl? Now, assessing Devin Brown, of course, is a little unfair because he left injured, but Lincoln Kienholz did not look remotely close to being ready.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have some issues. It's definitely a concern because they haven't had a quarterback question. Now, some of that is had 3 straight first-round picks before Kyle McCord. So how many schools produce 4 or 5 straight first-round quarterbacks? It almost never – I don't think it's ever happened, honestly. So it's natural. Devin Brown, we just don't know because he got hurt. I don't know what they have there. I can't answer that because I honestly don't know. And they didn't really get one out of the transfer portal. There'll be some speculation out of Aaron Noland. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Ryan Day next year because – Michigan's obviously taking the upper hand in that rivalry. The not winning bowl games thing is going to start to pop up. He's an incredible coach, incredible offensive mind. But I mean, through this, I've lived in Central Ohio. I know what happens next is he starts getting compared to John Cooper, and that's not something you want.
Bill, out of the teams that we saw yesterday, and you can expand this out past the 4 in the college football playoff if you'd like to, but out of the top teams that we've seen play in this bowl season, who do you think is best positioned moving forward, whether it's, like I said, either the college football playoff participants or anybody else you've seen recently in these high-profile bowl games?
I mean, Georgia will still be amazing next year, and Georgia's probably kicking themselves because they're really good. They're a really good team that crushed Florida State by 60. They're going to have the depth through recruiting necessary to win a national championship. I think it's definitely Georgia. So I don't know. I mean, but Ohio State will be good. Alabama will be good. The signing day and all of those things is built. So same old, the rich will get richer. But, Washington and TCU are proof that new blood is possible, and in a hurry. I mean, Sonny Dykes did it in his first season. Hill and DeBoer did it in his second season. So turnarounds can happen, and I think that's probably the allure that we get to see more teams in it.
So, Bill, you're telling me next year 2 for Matt Rule, Nebraska in the college football playoff. Is that what I heard?
I mean, they got the 5-star kid. I mean, no, I think what he did, it's a little, but he's not skipping steps. And he talked about that at Big Ten Media Day, that he's not going to skip a step and that it may take a little longer as a result. I think it starts with a bowl game, but I mean, they big wins on signing day, obviously. So the excitement's got to be there. And they're in a conference where it's going to be riveting next year, having all these teams put together.
Bill, speaking of a conference that won't be as riveting, the ACC, I was sitting at home yesterday thinking about Mario Cristobal and Miami and looking at the whiffs that they made in the portal at the quarterback position. How hot is the seat right now for Cristobal, and how does a school of Miami's caliber miss out on these big names?
Well, I mean, it's hard. I think one of the things that's happened with Florida State and Florida is, when I was growing up in the 90s, they had all the 5-star talent in state. Those guys go to Alabama and Georgia and Clemson, and more of them are going there. That's part of it. Quarterback position's also part of it. They look generally disinterested in playing Rutgers. I mean, that was the most striking thing to me is Miami play all the time in the Big East. That was Rutgers' first win ever against Miami. So, yeah, they've got a lot of work to do. And that season was derailed at the Georgia Tech game, and it never really got back on track. So it really does start at the quarterback position. And that's until that changes, I mean, Miami will probably be stuck in that neutral of 7-5, 6-6, 8-4 at max type season.
We're talking with Bill Bender of the Sporting News. Bill, if you were the czar of college football, we've talked a little bit about some of the things you would change here, but you mentioned the transfer portal, you mentioned maybe some revenue sharing, we mentioned opt-outs as well. If you could just kind of flick your wrist, use your magic wand, and fix a couple things in college football, what would that look like?
You got to get rid of the 4-hour game. I know it's commercials. I know they tried to speed the game up. I know some people complained about it, but it's not my generation. You'll lose the next one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have kids. They can't. How many times do I have to tell my kids, get off your phone? Like, the attention span of the next generation is nowhere near ours, and we're on our phones all the time too. So, I mean, you've got to eliminate the 4-hour game, and until they come up with a solution that allows those games to be in that NFL 3-hour window, I think you're in trouble long term. There's no reason for that game to be as late as it did last night, and that's going to eventually hurt the sport. I think so, at least. Some people might disagree and say more football is great, but the analogy, I wouldn't sit through something that wasn't I didn't sit through Gettysburg, the movie. It was like 4 hours long. Why would I sit through? I'm not sitting through anything that's 4 hours long.
So you're not a big extended edition Lord of the Rings guy. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I'll watch the movie, but it's tough to do it in one sitting.
You got to take a little intermission in there.
I mean, like, I don't have time, and I don't think most people do. Like, if you're gonna watch, I mean, that's a little absurd, and that's something that I want to see what the ratings are, because it's one of those. Why would you put something while you were sleeping with Texas Washington? Why should it be while you were sleeping? You should have these games on at a reasonable hour. And I'm not complaining. I mean, I was up anyway, but I'm just saying for the sport at large, that's the problem.
Bill, do you think they meet up with Major League Baseball at all and speeding up the game?
I mean, it's possible. It definitely is. And I think, we'll see what happens next, but the pace of play is a concern. And I'm telling you, that's from a soccer guy. But the appeal of the 2-hour game, because I think that keeps people's attention, even if it's a 1-0 game.
Bill Bender of the Sporting News. Bill, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you waking up a little early with us after those or
not going to bed.
Or just skipping going to bed altogether. We appreciate the time as always, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Hey, that was fun, guys. Thanks so much for having me on. Take care.
Hey, appreciate you, Bill.
That's Bill Bender of the Sporting News, covers college football. I hadn't really thought about the pace of play thing much. Obviously, I knew the games were dragging.
It was long.
And you kind of expect that. It's kind
of
like
fortunate those games were exciting.
Yes, if those were bad games, it becomes a much tougher hang immediately, right? And so I do agree with him that that's something they probably need to address. I don't know what you can do. I mean, you could probably take out the clock stopping on first downs the way they do in the NFL. That would speed up the game a little bit. There's probably some commercials that you just have to say, like, hey.
Well, they have limited the clock stopping.
Right,
on
yeah,
first downs.
they've made some changes there.
But you're saying altogether.
Yeah, go further. Go to the full NFL model. You could go. I almost wonder how much more there is to using in-game advertisings rather than full commercial breaks, because I think people, especially now, I think people have more of a stomach for advertisements being kind of part of the broadcast. And if you can do that while keeping the game moving rather than taking 3 minutes here to load people up with commercials, or 3 minutes every, after every punt or after every kickoff and whatever. I mean, the thing that drives me the most crazy about the NFL, right, is, okay, touchdown, commercial break, kickoff, commercial break.
Yeah.
That is the thing that I would eliminate immediately. But I wonder how much you could make up for some of taking out, just like removing some of those commercial breaks and just saying, hey, we're going to have in-game advertising, whether it's banners, whether it's live reads by the commentators, whatever it is.
Yeah, because I thought for example, the Allstate commercials, because is it the Allstate Sugar Bowl? Is that?
Yeah.
The Allstate commercials that
it was
would take
Nokia
place,
when I was growing up, but it's Allstate now.
Those commercials that would take place throughout the broadcast. So they would say, hey, let's toss it, let's take a word from our sponsor.
Well,
and
it
was like
the
a 15
mayhem
second
thing.
Yeah, it was a 15-second mayhem, but it was still on the game. It's kind of like what golf does every now and then.
Split screen it.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe that's a way to go. I know it takes away from like the ad itself because people probably aren't watching the ad as much. But if you mute the game and you have a separate screen for the ad that has the audio and you're hearing it, like that's really all you need is to hear the ad.
The audio is more important.
And then maybe just have an a camera that is overhead of each team's huddle and just have it as a static frame.
Yeah.
And then boom, you have a window of ads, but then people still feel like they're on the game. Like maybe it's a divide like that, divide and conquer. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because
by keeping your audience and not have, because there are times like where I'll just get up during the commercial break and or I'll switch the channel just because I don't want to hear the commercials, and then I'll come back to the game when I think the commercials are over and I miss 2 downs.
Or it's where I catch up on my phone or Twitter or whatever, right? Because a lot of times we're on Twitter during games and interacting with people and stuff like that. But you have to find a different way.
I was just going to say, was part of the delay in start yesterday due to the Rose Bowl parade itself? Like, do they want people to get, I mean, is it because of all the outside activities? Is that these games are going longer and that there's a lot later start time? So, I mean, because you got all the festivals, and you don't want to lose all of that too when it comes to these games, because that's a major part of it.
No, you can lose the parades. I get people care, but no college football fans care about the parades. I get what you're saying, Shane. But the reason that the Rose Bowl started at 4 is because the Rose Bowl committee is so far up their own buttholes about their own self-importance and getting the sunset over the San Gabriel Mountains and whatever nonsense, because like they think Keith Jackson is still calling games. But that's why the game started at 4 as opposed to a 3 o'clock or 2. Like, in all reality, that game should have started at 2 o'clock Eastern time, which would have been, or Central
Even if
time.
it was 2 o'clock Central, yeah,
which would have been 11 a.m. on the West Coast, which is a totally normal time to start a football game. 11 a.m. is when you've been starting football games all year. You started at 2. The next game comes on at 6:30. Everybody's in bed by 10 o'clock. Everybody's happy to go. Again, I'm not complaining. We get to do a cool job. The games were awesome. But if you want to reach a broader audience, because like Bill said, a lot of people probably went to bed last night.
There's a reason the Super Bowl starts at 5:30.
Yeah,
Central Time.
Yes.
And there's a reason that the College Football National Championship game will start at 6:30.
So people can watch it and not have to worry about it.
6:30 is still kind of late.
Yeah.
For a 4-hour college football game, it's still kind of late.
Hey, better than last night, though. Coming up next, we've got some New Year's resolutions here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're about to do some New Year's resolutions, and that today is brought to you by our friends at Dingman's Collision Center. Dingman's has 4 great metro area locations, and they've been in the Omaha area in business, family-owned and operated for over 25 years, voted first place Best of Omaha for 18 years running. They invest in the latest technology so they can work on whatever make and model you've got for them, whether it's a Ford or a Tesla or anything in between. They have you covered. They've also got the community covered with their Give Back program. For every car repair, Dingman's gives back to the community. Go to dingmans.com for more information. Wanted to get to some, well, let's start with our sportsy New Year's resolutions here. I did a couple. I stayed local for both of these. I did one Nebraska and one Creighton.
Ooh, okay.
We'll go Nebraska first. And I don't think this is a hot take. I don't think this is a difficult resolution to achieve, but I do think it's important. I think Nebraska football's New Year resolution should be Dylan Raiola is your day one starter. That should be your resolution. Now, that is not saying hand him the job. Because what's a resolution, right? It's something you work towards. So I don't think this should be a situation where you're trying to find a stopgap 1-year guy the way Kyle McCord should have been or would have been. I don't think you're trying to find somebody that, maybe you don't think Dylan Raiola ready. Everything that you do from now until whatever the day of the first game is, September 1st, or I don't have it, October 28th, I think, or August 28th, I think is off the top of my head.
I hope it's not October 28th.
That would be a long time. That's too long without football.
I'd be really sad.
I'd be really bummed out.
It'd be like a 4-minute commercial break during the college football
it's like
semifinals.
It's like a 10-month off season. We don't need that. But everything they do between now and August 28th should be working towards the goal of starting Dylan Raiola. If you want to bring in a veteran for some competition, absolutely. You want to let Danny Kaelin push him as far as he can, absolutely. But everything Nebraska should be doing should be pointing to Dylan Raiola and working towards getting Dylan Raiola ready to start that very first football game, because from a player standpoint, he is the future. He's the face of the franchise. He's the dude. And if you can get him on the field early and successful and ready to play early, that invites more high caliber guys to say, oh, I don't have to sit here. I don't have to wait here. I can go and they'll get me ready. If I enroll early, they'll get me ready and have me ready to go by fall. Because if they can do it at the quarterback position, you can do it just about anywhere. Maybe not offensive line. Sometimes it's hard to get those guys physically ready. But if you're talking about skill position, you're talking about just about anywhere else on the football field. We already saw what they did on the defensive line last year. If I get there early and I'm good enough, I'm going to get a chance to play and they'll have me ready to go. That, to me, should be one of the primary resolutions for Nebraska football this year.
And that can spark major parity in the game itself. And it's something I talked about before we took our holiday break. Dylan Raiola committing shows other 5-stars that they can do it at a school if it's done well. If Dylan Raiola does it at Nebraska, which there's a good chance he does, other players around the country, high school top recruits, are going to say, maybe I don't have to go to the biggest school in order to get my name out there or be the best player possible or win a national championship. I can do it at this smaller, let's just call it SEC school, Big Ten school, whatever. And that parity is a good thing, because it's like when we just got done talking to Bill Bender, and he's like, I think the 12-team playoff came a little bit early. And that's because of the 4 teams that we saw yesterday. But those 4 teams we saw yesterday, yes, Alabama was in that mix, but the parity.
Yeah.
Michigan has been there before. Yes, Washington has too, but Washington's not a normal team there. Texas isn't a normal team there.
No.
Because there's parity. That's why there's excitement.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so moves like that cause excitement. And that's why just parity is so good for the game. And to branch off your point, for that coaching staff, or for this coaching staff, it's highly important to develop these young guys quickly in order to make a big statement in the new and improved Big Ten. Whether that's at the quarterback position, because that's the biggest need right now, but also with the young wide receivers. Yes, they got the game reps, but now it's also important to develop them more this offseason. There's kind of a newish looking offensive line. Donnie Raiola has done a great job, but even though some of these young guys got some reps, it's important to develop those younger guys so that they're ready to go. Because as you said, you don't just walk in as a 5-star offensive lineman and just start.
Right.
Because sometimes you're just not physically ready for that.
Yeah.
More times than not, you are if you're a 5-star.
If you're a 5-star, but anybody below that.
But even Bricks, Bricks is a 4-star. He could be physically ready, but it's likely that he needs a year so that he can get his body up to speed. But it's just really important, because you don't want to get caught sleeping in the gauntlet of what the Big Ten is becoming. The one resolution for me for Husker football is this, and I've been going back and forth. Do I give the team take? Do I give the fan take? I think I'm going to give the fan take.
Okay.
Less negative Nancy's, more optimistic Oscars.
Okay.
That's what this fan base needs to become. Get rid of the, oh, just wait, they'll blow it.
Yeah.
Get rid of the, I saw it coming all along, or the, here we go again. Get that out of here.
Yeah.
After the improvement already made to this roster, after retaining the best defensive coach in all the land, And yeah, I'm going to make that claim. All the land, because it's like a good fairy tale. And tack on, it's year 2 for Rule. And what happens in year 2 of Rule?
They start going up.
Magical things back in fairy tale land. It's just time to loosen up. Everybody out there, just loosen up. Hear me out.
And don't forget, they did land their Prince Charming.
They did land Prince Charming. I don't know where the other glass slipper is. But just trust that everything will go right for a change.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. Be optimistic all season long. Be an optimistic Oscar, not a negative Nancy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I do get super frustrated too, and I get it, right? I understand the trauma, for lack of a better term, of watching Nebraska lose and fail in the most creative ways possible over the last several years, especially in the last 7 to 10 years. You want to go even further back. Yeah, there were some bad times in the first part of the 2000s as well, but I get pretty tired of all of the, well, this is what Nebraska does, and Dylan Raiola committed to Nebraska, so we must be a bust, and whatever, all of this stuff, right? That drives me crazy because, and I've said this, I think I said this in our Hurrdat team group chat. I watched Nebraska win national championships from the age of 7 to 9, right? 3 titles in 4 years, and literally watching those things happen, watching them come back against Miami in a game that everybody thought they were going to lose, watching them blow the doors off of Florida in a game that nobody thought they could keep up, watching them go out and abuse Peyton Manning in 1997 to win the national title. Then watching those things happen is one of the core reasons I believe good things can happen in life now, because in a formative age, I saw them happen. I saw things that weren't supposed to go Nebraska's way, and they went Nebraska's way. So now, guess what? As an adult, I have my moments where I'm a negative Nancy instead of an optimistic Oscar, but part of the reason I believe good things can happen is because I saw them happen to Nebraska football when I was a kid. I know that there's a lot of people that either they were later in life, so it wasn't as formative to them, or they're younger and they didn't see it happen. But you have to understand, just because that's the way it's been doesn't mean that's the way it will always be. Just because things have been going rough doesn't mean that Matt Rule is not going to figure it out. Doesn't mean that Dylan Raiola is a bust. You have to get out of the mindset of this defeatist, just I don't know, go to counseling or something, go get a therapist, get out of this mindset of nothing good is ever going to happen in Nebraska football again. Because good things have already happened in Nebraska football. It's like Nebraska fans struggle dealing with success or dealing with good things, right? Even when good things happen, we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Well, guess what? Sometimes the other shoe doesn't drop. Sometimes good things just happen to Nebraska football. It certainly happened in the 90s. It seems like it's starting to happen again now with Matt Rule and Dylan Raiola. And guess what? The offensive line coach that nobody wanted all of a sudden has the most sound unit on the team. Look at the positives, because there's some momentum rolling in that direction as well. As always with these segments, we wrote down 4 things. We only ever get to 1. Not a big deal. That's okay. Coming up next, we will get to Scott Eklund. He covers Washington football for dogman.com, and they're headed to the national title. Coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Watching the last drive from the sideline, it was just believing. Coach DeBoer, he always preached to us, we're built for this moment, and we believed it. And no matter, the circumstances, the adversity that we went through during that drive, I know everybody on the sideline continue to believe in the defense that they were going to get that stop, because they've done it all year. You've seen it so many times each and every week, throughout the season, them coming up with big-time stops and big-time moments. It was just wait for the play, and it was bound to happen. But just super blessed, and we were all believing on the sideline. So.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube streaming live. We're from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the H&H Chevrolet stage. And joining us now on the War Horse Sportsbook hotline is Scott Eklund. He covers Washington football for Dogman.com. That is the 24/7 site for the Washington Huskies. Scott, how are you this morning?
I'm good, man. It's hard to believe where we're at. I'm really tired. I didn't sleep much last night. I think I published my last story about 2:30 last night or this morning, and yeah, just unbelievable. But that this team has a chance to do something they've only done a couple of other times in program history.
Scott, so we appreciate you getting up early with us this morning, considering the late night. But, I mean, talk about just how far this program has come to be in a position where, you know, they're literally one game away from a national championship, whereas even a few years ago, I think even when, correct me if I'm wrong here, but even when Chris Peterson made the college football playoff in, what was that, 2015, I don't know that it felt this tangible in terms of a national championship being in their grasp. Just how far has it felt like Washington's come just in a really short period of time?
Well, if you think about it, you know, they were 0-12 in 2018, and I'm sorry, 2008, and then Steve Sarkisian comes the next year, the guy that Washington just beat last night, comes to Washington, kind of instills just a little bit more toughness and gets the program back on its footing. Then Chris Peterson comes in and takes over and takes them to heights. They actually went to the college football playoff in 2016. And you're right. When you looked at that college football playoff, and to be honest with you, I don't even remember who I know Alabama won. I'm pretty sure Alabama won it, or Clemson might have won it. Whoever won it that year, Washington was the fourth team that year that nobody expected Washington to do much. They stuck with Alabama for about a half, and then Alabama kind of took off from there. And then to go 4-8 in 2021, and Jimmy Lake gets fired because of an incident on the sidelines of the player and everything like that. All the stuff that was going on and everything. To be here now, maybe we saw it could happen down the road, but not in year 2 of Kalen DeBoer and his staff being here. I mean, it's just to think of all the things that had to happen. And really, I think the only reason it's available is because of the transfer portal, because Michael Penix is a generational quarterback. He shows up at the University of Washington. It's a perfect marriage of player and scheme and coach. And that's why we're where we're at. They had a good foundation of talent. They've added to that through the portal. And this is, you know, they're now 60 minutes away from being a national champion.
Speaking of Kalen DeBoer, Scott, he isn't unfamiliar with the championship waters, won 3 at Sioux Falls. How do you think that championship experience sets up Washington in a spot that they haven't been in a long time?
Well, you know, it's the foundations that Kalen DeBoer and his staff have brought with them through all the journeys. If you go back, I mean, Kalen DeBoer is only 3 years younger than I am, 49 years old. It's taken, you know, so many of these coaches are getting winning earlier. You know, they're being promoted to head coaching jobs at major universities. Ryan Day at Ohio State, Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, and now at USC. You know, you see these coaches getting these jobs, and they're getting them in their early 30s, and having success, but maybe not getting over that hump. Kalen DeBoer has paid his dues. He's paid it at the Division III level or Division II level. Or NAIA level. He's done it at every level, and he's won at every level. I mean, the guy is 104-11 as a head coach. So for what the culture that he was able to bring in and establish here very quickly, there was already a pretty good foundation because of what Chris Peterson left and everything. But you know, but then there was 2 years of the Jimmy Lake era that just never really panned out. But there was still guys here that were talented, that wanted to work hard and wanted to kind of sell out for the team. And Kalen DeBoer has just taken that to that next level. And I think it's the confidence that he and the coaches have in the players, the confidence that they have. They know we've been here before. Yes, it was maybe at a lower level, but we've been here before, and we know what it takes to get us to that national title. And I think that really has the players believing that, hey, no matter what anybody says about us, no matter how many people doubt us, we can win, and we know we can win, and we know who we are. And they've got just some unbelievable leaders on this team. I mean, it's just the combination is absolutely perfect for the championship run that they're on right now.
We're talking with Scott Eklund. He covers Washington football for dogman.com of the 24/7 Sports Network. Scott, I'm curious, when you go back to the hiring of Kalen DeBoer. What was the reaction to his hiring? Obviously, he'd had a little bit of success at Fresno State, although he was only there for, the COVID year, which is like half a year, and then the full year in 2021. Just what was the reception of him when he was hired? Because he was still, I think, fairly unknown at the time.
Well, I mean, he'd only been a head coach at Fresno State for 2 years, really. And so everybody's like, oh, okay. And his name started to pop up a little bit more. Washington was heavily in the running for the Iowa State head coach, and they were also looking at the Wake Forest head coaches, bringing him in. But Kalen DeBoer is the one that they really kind of honed in on as things kind of moved along. And, we just Jen Cohen, the then athletic director at the University of Washington, she's now down at USC. She wanted a guy who fit the culture and a guy who was going to go out and hire coaches that had that ability to recruit and also coach. She wanted a guy who was going to instill a confidence in the program and everything like that. I don't know if any of us saw this being where we'd be at, not just 2 years in, maybe even a decade in. Washington has never been they've always been a top 25 team, but they've never been a perennial top 10 team. And for Kalen DeBoer to be able to take it this far and do what he's done is just incredible. And so when they were going through the process of hiring a coach, he was just a guy because of everybody that Jen Cohen talked to said Kalen DeBoer is a guy who knows football. He knows how to build a culture. He does it right. He does it the right way. He doesn't cut corners. Everything is about the team. Everything is about the family that he wants to instill in his players. And he's going to be a great person for you. So I think when things came down to it, I think they would have preferred to have the Iowa State coach, to be honest with you. But it didn't work out that way. He decided to stay there. And Washington fans and Husky Nation are reaping the benefits of it because Kalen DeBoer has this team rolling, and we'll see what the future holds. But right now, to be where he's at 2 years in, it's hard to fathom how far this program has come.
Scott, we have to talk about Michael Penix for a moment. Hurrdat Sports Radio's Heisman Trophy winner, Michael Penix, that is. We know he has great arm talent, but I think nationally, to the average college football fan, he really put on a show last night. Make it even more exciting, though, for the average football fan for a moment. Who would you compare Michael Penix Jr. to if you had an NFL comp in mind?
Oh, boy. You need to give me that question ahead of time. Think about it. I could see him being compared to someone like, when I say this, I mean, we're talking about arguably the all-time greatest quarterback of all time, but he has a little Tom Brady in him. Okay. He's the guy who gets kind of surly on the sidelines every now and then. He demands perfection from his teammates and everything like that. He doesn't get surly toward his teammates, but he's a guy who's Tom Brady always had a great arm, and he could throw the deep ball. He could do a lot of different things. He had pinpoint accuracy. Michael Penix has that too. The one thing that Michael Penix can do, and we saw it a few times last night, is he can run, whereas Tom Brady can never run. But you got a long way to go to get to Tom Brady's level about winning. But he just has that moxie, and you watch him. If you go back and you watch that the Pac-12 championship game, and you watch Bo Nix, who unquestionably had a great season the last 2 years actually for the Ducks, and but you looked at Bo Nix and his demeanor and his sideline, the look on his face, he looked very stressed, intense, worried, whatever you want to call it. Michael Penix was joking on the sidelines of that game when it was tied, and that
Crazy.
just isn't normal for guys at this level. And then you throw in, he's a guy who can throw the ball make any throw, and he's just a special player.
I think you're trolling Michigan with that Tom Brady take.
No, I'm really not at all. You know, I have a ton of respect for Michigan and what they've done, and you know, I'm not Jim Harbaugh's biggest fan, but I mean, the guy is a hell of a football coach. Say what you want about some of the other off-field stuff and all that. He's a hell of a football coach. He can build a program, and this is going to be such a fun game. The last time Washington won a national title, 1991, guess who they beat? They beat Michigan.
Whoa!
And I mean, that was the Desmond Howard year when he did the Heisman pose against Ohio State. Washington ended up beating them, and their wide receiver, who actually had a better year than Desmond Howard, did the Heisman pose in that game. You know, to kind of taunt him. And Desmond Howard had the great comeback that said, "Hey, if Mario Bailey," that's who did the pose, "if Mario Bailey wants to see the Heisman, he can come over to my house." But you know, I mean, it's just this is an all-time matchup. Washington and Michigan. I haven't even looked at what their overall record is between the two schools, but they've played each other several times in the Rose Bowl. They've matched up during the seasons as well, during the regular seasons. So this is going to be a matchup, and it's kind of that old Rose Bowl matchup between Big Ten and Pac-10 and Pac-12 that we used to see all the time. And now these teams are going to be playing each other on a yearly basis, so it won't be quite as special as it was before. But you know, this is going to be fun for everybody involved.
That's Scott Eklund from dogman.com. Scott, we appreciate your time, and maybe we'll catch up again soon.
Yes, thanks, guys. Anytime you guys need something, give me a call.
Thanks, Scott.
Scott Eklund from dogman.com.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me, Shane Schillerberg producing, and we are live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and for hour number 3, we're on KFOR in Lincoln. We're live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill H&H Chevrolet stage. we are efforting our friend Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. He'll be joining us shortly. One thing I wanted to talk about with Washington real quickly is Ryan Grubb, their offensive coordinator, because we talk a lot about the rise of Kalen DeBoer through Sioux Falls and his meteoric rise through the coaching. It felt meteoric, but it took him, almost 20 years to go from Sioux Falls to the head coach at the University of Washington. But Ryan Grubb went through quite the journey himself. They talked a little bit about it on the broadcast last night, where he was working some, I say civilian job, you know what I mean, some outside of football job, when he was looking for any coaching opportunity that he could find, when Kalen DeBoer ended up calling him and getting him over to Sioux Falls as an assistant. And his journey following mostly Kalen DeBoer through his different stops at Southern Illinois and Eastern Michigan and Fresno State and Indiana, or I don't think he was actually at Indiana, at Eastern Michigan, Fresno State, and then Washington. That's something that I think we probably need to look at deeper at some point. But for now,
or
we're
just
gonna
give credit to.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the willingness and the ability to continue to persevere. And it goes to a thing that I talk about all the time, and we're going to get to Schaefer here in a second. But I truly believe there is some of the best coaching that you see doesn't always happen at the Division I level. There's a ton of super high quality coaches at the NAI level, the Division II level, FCS level, wherever, and certainly at the high school level as well. We've seen that here in the state. But just some incredible coaching that some of these guys just need opportunities, and we saw it with Kalen DeBoer and with Ryan Grubb. They can succeed at the absolute highest levels of college football. Joining us now, he's successful at the highest levels, I think, of everything he does. Our guy, Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, not much. Just getting back into the swing of things. Is that week between Christmas and New Year's just always just different? I didn't do any real espousing on the radio anywhere. I was just talking to Slider all week long, giving him my thoughts. He was just looking at me like, what are we doing here? Go away.
Giving takes to the dogs.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. How were your holidays, Schaefer? You have a good
holidays were good. The holidays were good. Had an enjoyable college football playoff yesterday. That was good. This is 2 years in a row where the two games were really, really good, coming off of a 10-year stretch where none of the games were really good. So that's nice to see. I like this trend. I'm really excited for this the Michigan-Washington game. I know that it's a 4.5 point line right now, but to me, I could see this going either way. I don't know that I view either team as a particularly strong guarantee to win this game. I think it matches up pretty well.
I got to tell you, Schaefer, all season long in big games, Washington has been overlooked. I can't find a way to bet against them. They're the team that, whether it's 4 points or 10 points or 15 points, they look like the better team when they're on the football field.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just want to write them off as this fluky, cute story. And if you just go look at it, no one had better wins coming into the college football playoff than they did. I mean, you could argue Alabama, Georgia if you wanted to. You could argue Michigan State, Ohio State, but they beat Oregon twice. And I think Oregon is as good as every team that was in the college football playoff as well. And so then they just went out and they handled Texas. So they're going to be prepared for Michigan. I don't think it's going to be any kind of walk in the park. I saw it on Twitter yesterday. There's people oh, they don't have a defense. Oh, they haven't played a good defense. Just everyone wants to be dismissive because it's not it's not an Alabama, Clemson, a Georgia. It's not a known brand team. But they play good football, and Michael Penix can spin it, man. That was just a fun display. I've watched him, the last couple of years and have been just amazed at what he's done. I thought last night was as good as he's ever looked in terms of dropping some of those passes in there. And there's definitely going to be an NFL team that is going to talk themselves into Michael Penix a lot sooner than they thought just on last night alone.
He's going to be a combine king. Like Michael Penix is the perfect person to put in the combine just for his ability to throw the football and place it wherever he wants. Like with pressure, if he's able to do that, think about what he just does when nobody is running at him. What he just does in practice, just loosey-goosey. This guy is going to be a combine king, and that will probably elevate where he goes in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably for sure a first-round guy anyways. Now it's just a matter of where he's going to go in that first round and who's going to talk themselves into him.
Yeah, Schaefer, you mentioned some of the best wins of the college football season. At the time Washington played them, they beat number 8, number 24, number 13, number 12, number 5, and number 3 in the country. That's, I think, half their schedule was top 25 wins, several of those on the road or at neutral sites. Just an incredible effort there by Washington this season. You have to hope the quality semifinals this year don't lead to a similar result that we saw last year after some good semifinals in the college football playoff, though.
I'd be pretty shocked. I just don't think I don't think like a runaway and hide game is going to happen here. I think that Washington has the ability to kind of strike and stay in games, and Michigan can be slow and methodical, to a fault, and that could also just keep it relatively low scoring as well.
Schaefer, I think you hit the nail on the head with something you tweeted out last night about the newcomers in the Big Ten, because the early take was, man, I don't want to see Lincoln Riley. And now after watching Washington this season, it's become more of, is Kalen DeBoer the one that we should be worried about? You've also got Dan Lanning on this list, though, that's coming over. You have Chip Kelly that, historically has been somebody to worry about. In terms of the scariest to face, rank them 1 to 4 for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because you're only going to be able to go off of basically what their team looks like right now, and these aren't going to be the exact replicas. I mean, I think Oregon's probably the scariest overall, just straight up team because of what the recruiting and everything that Dan Lanning has going on. And then after that, like you look at, and I think Oregon is most ready for kind of the style of the Big Ten. And that's sort of where this conversation, I think, is really kind of interesting, because I don't know about you guys, but on the message boards, when this all happened, it was all, USC, UCLA, and obviously that move happened first. But since we knew it was going to be all 4 of them, you just never heard anyone talk about Washington. And this was in the midst of a then undefeated team, a now undefeated season, with 1 game to play, and they're playing for a title. And Kalen DeBoer has been a fantastic coach everywhere he's been. Like it's hard to imagine that they're going to take any kind of step back because of their schedule is going to change. Now the travel, that'll be different. The weather will be a little bit different, but I just don't think like we've done enough job talking about what Kalen DeBoer can bring to that conference too. Like that is not an easy offense to defend, and it's only going to get better the more time he's able to put into it, the more player. I mean, he's only been there. This is his 2nd year, and they're playing for a title. Like, I mean, so this is a team that it's going to merit watching, going forward. And then the last thing on this, just how good is the coaching in the Big Ten going to be? Like, I mean, I already regard it as the most difficult coaching conference in the country. I think it exposed Scott Frost pretty quickly as to why he was going to struggle. And now you're adding 4, really good coaches to the mix that are going to challenge in different ways. But man, right now DeBoer just looks like a shining star, and that's great for the conference, and it's great for college football because he's somewhere that isn't a normal school. I think it's good to have good teams out in the Pacific Northwest, and I really hope this Oregon-Washington thing continues because I think that's great for football too.
Schaefer, I was talking about this earlier with Andrew. I asked Bill Bender of the Sporting News about this as well. How short is the list of players that you would take, or excuse me, of coaches that you would take over Kalen DeBoer at this point?
I mean, it's got to be a pretty short list, right? Like, again, every season he's ever been the head coach for has been a success for that organization, regardless of what level it's at. And by success, again, I don't think he's lost. Like, I think he's had at least 9 wins in every season of his career.
Except
no matter where he's been.
2020 with
because of the COVID year.
shortened year. Yeah, but he's never lost more than 3 games in a season ever.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredibly remarkable. Yeah, I mean, when you sit and list it out, it's probably easily in the top 10. He's already skied past guys that I like in James Franklin and some other coaches that have done well, but he's already doing more. I mean, and I don't think it's a TCU, Dyke situation where I think he's a solid coach, but it kind of was a magical season. Like, I think this is a sustainable thing that's happening at Washington. I think this is a real offense that's going to be problematic. So I mean, I don't know that I can put a number exactly on it, but certainly somewhere in the top 10, probably inching towards the, top 6 in that neighborhood. I mean, there's still some really good coaches out there, but he is definitely going to be one that we're going to talk about a lot.
It's definitely hard to talk yourself into very many of them over him at this point, though. Like we were trying to.
I maybe got 3.
Yeah, especially when you consider age. Like if you're talking about moving forward, since Saban's in his early 70s. Obviously a lot of people would still take Saban, but if you're looking for a guy kind of from here moving forward, man, I think you get to like 3, maybe 4 guys.
Yeah, I mean and here's the thing, we don't even know what the future is going to necessarily look like there. And the Big Ten is going to get really interesting in terms of, what does it look like for Ryan Day, especially if things happen at Michigan that's expected with Jim Harbaugh, and then he's no longer there. And then the target gets even bigger while you're adding these other schools. So it's going to be fascinating to see kind of how it all plays out with the conference. And it'll be fascinating to see how Kalen DeBoer handles all that change. And the thing is, Will Rogers coming in, that's a guy that can sling it too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like I'm expecting any kind of massive drop off for that offense because he's not going to have Michael Penix. I mean, he's still going to have an air show next year for sure.
And a great last name on the back of the jersey. Now, Schaefer, let's move away from Washington for a moment and look at Michigan. One piece of this whole puzzle, and at least making a local connection here, is Ernest Hausman and the work that he's done. How excited are you just to see him living out his dream of going to the national championship?
Yeah, I'm really happy for Ernest. I mean, you think about it, he made that decision last year, which wasn't an easy one. And he locked in on Michigan right away. And they were a school that I know, going back to his recruitment, that he had a lot of interest in, and he never was able to visit because it was during the COVID time period where visits weren't available, and he committed to Nebraska relatively early on. I mean, I think this is a guy that's going to be playing football on Sundays. I think he's going to have some really big football ahead of him. And it's one of those that, as weird as this is going to sound, I think Nebraska would have really benefited to keep him, but it worked out, I think, pretty well for everybody, that he ends up moving on. It's been great for him at Michigan, and Nebraska didn't miss a beat, at linebacker. Now, as you look at it, would you love to have him right now as your depth is what it is at linebacker? Sure. But this is just one of those scenarios where I think it's going to work out for everybody. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see Ernest Hausman as one of the top linebackers in the country, moving forward into next year.
Schaefer, you mentioned Harbaugh quickly there, and I didn't want to just roll over it there. So it sounded like you don't expect Harbaugh to be back at Michigan next year.
I just think there's two. Yeah, I mean, you have multiple NCAA investigations going on. I mean, I think it certainly seems like there was some potential for misleading with the recruiting one that happened, and we're talking about recruiting violations during COVID, which we know the NCAA is going to take a pretty dim view on to begin with. You look at what happened in the Arizona State staff, I mean, and what they did there. And then you throw in everything with this, and it's hard to imagine, like, this is a guy coaching in a championship game who missed the front end of the season and the back end of the season to suspensions. Like, it'd be really hard for me to sit here and be like, well, Jim Harbaugh is going to be back as a head coach at Michigan next year. Like, I just don't know how that happens. And how the NCAA sort of allows that to happen if you continue to be under investigation for these things.
Schaefer, I'm assuming you think he'll move on to the NFL, or do you think?
Yeah, I think he's going to move on to the NFL.
Okay, yeah.
So the Pete Carroll approach?
Yeah, I mean, stay ahead of what you need to, and he's going to have
the mobs at the gates. It's time to get out of town.
There's there's no shortage of teams that would be interested, I'm sure, in Jim Harbaugh, and I think you start right with the Vegas Raiders. I mean, they've had interest in Jim Harbaugh for like the last 10 years, and it just hasn't worked out. And so maybe this is who, starts things over in Vegas.
You're innocent until proven guilty.
What's that?
I said, do you think he's jealous of his brother, and that's why he wants to get back to the NFL?
I mean, he did beat him in a Super Bowl. You have to,
right?
Maybe he heads back to California and hangs out.
But he
with
has
that
a lot of NFL
Chargers
success
job.
too.
Yeah,
and we talked about that as well. Like for a guy that was only in the NFL for 4 years, he won 70% of his games. So it's not like he'll be the number one option if he's like, hey, I'm going to the NFL. No question, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I thought it was going to happen with Minnesota a couple years ago, and they completely decided against that. I think because the personality fit just wasn't quite there with the Wilfs and with Harbaugh, who wears people out. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there will be, whenever he leaves from Michigan, there will be the stories. There will certainly be the stories about what it was like there and how there's a culture shift no matter who the next coach is going to be, because that's just what it is. But he gets success. I mean, pretty much everywhere he goes. And I'll be fascinated, what this picture all looks like. And I'm going to be really curious, if Michigan ends up crowned champion, what a bizarre season. I mean, they go from start to finish with everything that came up. I mean, you even forget about it. Like Blake Corum has that great game last night. I mean, the man was aligned in a vacuum sales controversy. With, like how weird is this year? And it could end with them as champions. And then, he is potentially moving on to a different job because it's not assured he's going to be allowed to coach in 2024. What a bizarre, strange sport. And how lucky are we that we have a front row seat to it all the time? Like, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is quite the incredible storylines with Harbaugh, with Washington, the whole shebang. I don't know that we could ask for a whole lot more in terms of a college football playoff and a national championship in our last year of the 4-team playoff. Schaefer, is there something specific you're looking forward to the most as we leave this era of the college football playoff and move into the 12-team as this whole college football thing continues to evolve?
I think we've seen in the 4-team era, at least some organizations having better opportunities to make the playoffs and to, perform there and then grow. And I think that's only going to get better once you get to the 12-team. I think you're going to have more diverse years of champions. You're going to have less kind of just like Alabama, Clemson, Alabama. It's like it's going to be, I think, split up a little bit more, because when you seem like you have 12 chances to go play for a title effectively, it's going to make more schools seem like more options for the top talent, and that disperses a little bit. And I think we're going to see more of an NFL style thing where you're going to have these great teams that are going to have to try to get through a playoff. And that's not always the easiest thing in the world. And the playoff job is not to determine who is the single greatest team in any one season. It's to determine a champion. And to be the champion, you got to win the games when they matter. And that's what happens, in the NFL. And we're going to see these, whether it's the 49ers or the Ravens, there's going to be one seeds that falter at some point. It happens almost every year. And so I think that's good for the sport overall. I think it's easier as a college football fan when you think of the 12-team model that your team could have an actual opportunity to play in a game that really matters in the month of December and January. And that's not true for a lot of fan bases. They have to kind of talk themselves into like, okay, I really care about this because, this happened or whatever it is. But think about how many teams, would have been playing in playoff games this year. Their games would have mattered a little bit more. Think about how much fun it'll be to go from an experience like last night where you're really excited about the games that you watched, that there's more of them, So, and there's going to be clunkers in there because that's just how this works. But man, I just think it's better overall. And we have so much conversation about what's wrong with the sport. What a great display yesterday was to show you what is still great. And that's when you get fun matchups and good teams and diverse style of play across those two games. And it just led to a really awesome day for the sport.
Outside of all the commercial breaks. But parity is the point of that whole thing. parity, good parity for the sport. Schaefer, at least the last thing from me, we did a few New Year's resolutions for this Husker football team. I'm not going to ask for your personal New Year's resolutions, so you can throw away that sticky note.
Mine's always to spend more time with my phone, and people get really weirded out by it.
Only Schaefer. Only Schaefer. What are your Husker football, or at least your number one Husker football resolution?
Yeah, I mean, like, where do you even start? There's got to be like 700 that you could go.
Well, we had 4 on each of our lists, but we were only able to get to 1, so you are only able to get to 1 too.
Okay, that's fair.
The only way to make this fair.
I mean, we'll start with this one. Like, finish the task at hand. You know, like, you have an opportunity to finish out a game, go finish a game. Whether that's on offense, go finish the drive to get points. If that's on defense, and it was on defense for most of the year, get a critical stop, get off the field, give yourself the chance to win the game. You know, go stop Maryland, go stop Wisconsin, go stop Iowa, go stop Minnesota. When the chips were down, go get a stop, go win the game, go do something to win the game. Stop thinking the win is just going to happen if you stick around long enough. Like, you have to go create these things. And that's what I just feel like we haven't seen a Nebraska program do in some time. They're good at hanging around. They're not good at going out and winning the football game. And winners win, and that's what Nebraska wants to be. So go finish games.
Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, we appreciate your time as always. Happy New Year. We appreciate you always joining us, and I'm sure we'll hear plenty more from you in 2024.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Each week. See you, Schaefer.
That's our guy, Mike J. Schaefer. And if you didn't see him in 2023, you need to go out to Pratt Dental in North Platte, Nebraska in 2024, because they've got the BioClear method and modern smile design. It can correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and less invasive manner than traditional treatments such as crowns. You have less time waiting, less invasive, fewer appointments, because they can do multiple restorations in the same day. It's the first dentist in Nebraska to be certified for the BioClear method. You can give them a call at Pratt Dental, 308-221-2800, or head over to the website to learn more about the BioClear method, prattdental.com/BioClear-dental-treatment, or just hit prattdental.com. That's PRATT dental.com. Under services, you'll find the BioClear method to learn all you can. Coming up next, we're going to get to I know it's not a Monday, but it's kind of our Monday. We're going to get to a sports cleanup here, because a lot has happened since we were last on the air.
And we'll get to 3% of all of those things in the sports cleanup.
Yeah, we will get to almost none of it, but we will do our best. Coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back.
I will go to the shuffle. I will go.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
I will go to the shotgun with 5 wides, 3 to the wide side right. Hill takes the snap, delayed blitz. He throws left. It's intercepted. James Pierce down the far sideline to the 20, to the 10, and he'll take it the distance for the Tennessee touchdown on the pick 6.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. Speaking of Lincoln, our friends at the Warhorse Sportsbook have a special promotion going on at the casino in Lincoln. It's the Warhorse Festival of Games. Visit the Warhorse Casino in Lincoln for entries into a $100,000, you heard that right, $100,000 prop card challenge and grand prize drawings. Visit warhorsecasino.com for more details. Your chance to win $100,000, or with the grand prize drawings, you can get up to $20,000 in cash or free slot play. Again, only at the casino in Lincoln. So make sure you get down to Lincoln. If you're not already there, go to the Warhorse Casino in Lincoln or to warhorsecasino.com for more details. This will be surrounding, that prop card challenge will be surrounding the big football game, the big professional football game in February. That is where this promotion is coming in. So make sure you get down there, get to Warhorse Casino for all the information, and bring your friends. Get in there, do the prop challenge with your friends, get everybody to sign up, get entries in there. So not only, maybe you don't win the $100,000, but you can at least maybe win some bragging rights with your buddies. Make sure you get down there to the Warhorse Casino in Lincoln to enter into the prop card challenge or to the Festival of Games grand prize drawings as well. Don't forget, you can always just place your bets here in Omaha. I know that's what Andrew's is going to be doing, going over to Horseman's Park, 6303 Q Street. Go Dogs.
I should have placed the bet before the semifinals. Remember when I said I was going to do that, but then I chickened out?
Oh, I should have done it. And you chickened out on the money line too.
I did chicken out last night on the money line, but I took +4, and I got to tell you, I cashed in for one, and because I played it safe, stress-free on that final Texas drive. Completely stress-free. Because there was no way, unless it went to overtime,
right?
Unless they got a touchdown
and missed the extra point,
the PAT, that +4 wasn't covering. There was no way. I was just like, this is great.
You were feeling good, easy breezy.
But I wanted Washington, so I was kind of stressed out.
Yeah, I was too. But yeah, make sure you go to Warhorse Sportsbook, either in Lincoln, if you want to enter the Festival of Games prop card challenge or the grand prize drawings, or if you just want to place your bets, go to the casino in Lincoln or to Horseman's Park in Omaha. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. All right.
Real fast on that Tennessee highlight, because we appreciate all those chiming in on the YouTube stream. Sid pointed out earlier in the 8 o'clock hour, Iowa's played 3 teams in the top 25 and has scored a combined 0 points in those 3 games.
That's quite bad. Not good.
Penn State was 31-0.
Yep.
Michigan was 26-0. And Tennessee, 25-0 or 35-0.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, not great.
Not great, Bob.
So thank you, Sid.
Let's appreciate the stat.
Well, the backup quarterback actually looked better. I mean, as the game went, later on in the game.
Deacon Hill?
The backup quarterback.
I mean, they all look like backup quarterbacks.
Wasn't Deacon Hill the backup quarterback?
At one point, it was. They all look like backup quarterbacks.
56 yards, 2 INTs.
That's kind of what they do. Let's get into our Warhorse Sportsbook Sports cleanup. A lot of stuff going on while we were gone. Again, we're not going to get to most of it. A couple things that stuck out for me. So the Detroit Pistons finally won a basketball game.
I have that written down.
They finally won. I don't really have much to say about it, but they had lost 28 games in a row. They, which I think dated back to October. They had won like their 3rd game of the season and then finally won again last week. They've since been blown out by the Rockets after ending that streak, so they very well may be on.
They barely beat the Raptors.
They
barely beat them.
They very well may be on to a new streak. But what the funny thing is, too, is Cade Cunningham is putting up huge numbers.
Yeah, in that game specifically, he put up 30 points, but his numbers on the season are fantastic.
And pretty regularly putting up 25, 30, 35. He's dropped 40 at least once, I think maybe a couple times. Pretty consistently flirting with triple doubles. Doesn't matter. That team just gets smoked
so bad
every single night. I don't know what the plan is moving forward, because they've had, I believe it's a number 1 pick, 2 number 5 picks, a number 7, and I think there's another one in there. They've had lottery picks. Cunningham looks like he's talented. I mean, he's obviously putting up great numbers. They're just not hitting on much else. Thompson, the one they drafted this year, can't remember if it's Asur or Amen. I don't remember which one's in Houston and which one's in in Detroit. But the one in Detroit looks like he's pretty solid as well. I don't know where they go from here.
It is Asur.
Asur, yeah, that's what I thought. Amen's in Houston. Asur Thompson is in Detroit. But I don't know where they go from here, except for to probably several more losing streaks before the season is over. But that was one of the weirdly, people became like really big Pistons fans for a couple days just to try and they lost an overtime game to Boston that everybody thought they might be able to get. And then they finally get over the hump. But it was a very strange moment kind of in this weird dead week of sports and everybody's in the twilight zone between Christmas and New Year's. And so somehow in that twilight zone, we all became Detroit Pistons fans for
except for those people that had outstanding bets, maybe at Warhorse Casino, on the Pistons to lose every game down the stretch of the season.
Never win again.
Hey, also, I wanted to tell you about this. So it was Wednesday when I was back home and I was at a bar, and this one guy came up to my brother who was wearing an Oregon sweatshirt.
Okay.
And he goes, "Hey, man, Dylan Gabriel, Dante Moore, Oregon's back." And I looked puzzled. I go, "Oregon's back?
Where'd they go?"
He said, "Yeah, we got Dylan Gabriel now." I'm like, "Oregon's been back." You guys had Bo Nix this year who went off.
Yeah, he was
and he
third in the Heisman.
He goes, "Bo Nix is horrible." And this is where I should have stopped the conversation.
Yeah, that guy doesn't watch.
But you know what? I had to give him the business. He goes, "He's so bad. He was horrible at Auburn." I said, "Horrible at Auburn?"
He was inconsistent in Auburn.
I said, "He was the SEC Freshman of the Year." And he goes, "That doesn't matter. He was bad at Auburn." Wait, how can you be Freshman of the Year and then just all of a sudden be bad? I said he wasn't great.
No.
He still put up 2,400 yards in a season, and he fell off, but he turned it around at Oregon.
He's been very,
and
very
he went
good.
off at Oregon.
Yeah, he's been very good.
Absolutely nuts. And then I had somebody chime in and tell me that, I got to make sure I get it right. Oh, that Bo Nix isn't as good as Drake May. And I'm like, well, so now this is interesting.
Depends on what you
Drake
mean.
May is looked at as a better NFL prospect.
Yeah, it depends on what
than
you
Bo
mean.
Nix.
Yeah.
But if you look at college,
Bo Nix
his
has been more
collegiate career,
productive. Yeah,
Bo Nix has definitely been more productive.
for sure. So if you mean better in terms of talent and professional upside, yeah, Drake May is better. In terms of actual what you've done in college, Bo Nix is better.
But also look at this. Bo Nix was up for the Heisman this year for a majority of the year.
Yeah, I think he finished third, I believe.
Drake May fell off pretty fast when UNC lost
Started
one
losing.
game.
Yeah.
No, when they just lost one game. Even when Bo Nix lost to Michael Penix,
Yeah.
Bo Nix was still in top 5 conversation to win the Heisman.
Yeah.
And then it was after the Pac-12 championship game that he completely fell off.
Yeah, because if he wins that game, there's a chance he could have taken it.
But overall, I could not believe a guy walked up who said he was an Oregon fan
and no idea what he was talking about.
and had no clue that Oregon was already back.
Did he think Chip Kelly was still the coach? Is that?
I have no clue. I have no clue. All I know is I'm like, this is preposterous. I just argued with probably a 12-year-old.
We've got about a minute here left in the sports cleanup before we talk some Michigan football to wrap up the show. One last thing I wanted to get to. So there's a new spring football league headed our way. The XFL, owned by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and the USFL,
Go Battlehawks.
the reimagining of both of those leagues have merged together and will kick off play in March 2024. My question to you, Andrew Rogers, will a spring alternative football league ever work?
No.
All right, good answer. Coming up next, we will talk to our guy, Anthony Broome. Anthony covers Michigan football for the Wolverine.com, part of the On3 network. Obviously, Michigan and Washington will play in the college football championship game. We will catch up with Anthony, his thoughts on Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, his future, all of that as we wrap up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back.
It's what it means. It's what it means to these guys, to our players the most, to them, to our fans and our families. They get to experience that joy of being a champion. It's what it means to these guys, to our
We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
It's what it means to these guys, to our players the most, to them to be champions, for their parents to have their son be a champion, their brothers and sisters, their grandparents, for our coaches, for my kids to have a dad, be a champion, and my parents, and just those people that get to feel what that's like. That's kind of long gone for me. It's just my joy, my ecstatic joy is for our players and our coaches and our fans and our families. They get to experience that joy of being a champion.
Good morning. Welcome back as we wrap up the show here, our first of 2024 on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the H&H Chevrolet stage. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We're on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is Anthony Broome. He covers Michigan football for the Wolverine. That's part of the On3 Sports Network. Anthony, how are you this morning?
Sleep deprived, but good nonetheless. Thank you guys for having me.
Anthony, that's a common theme this morning as we have talked to a few college football guests, but we definitely appreciate you going on very little sleep to talk to us this morning. As somebody just who covers a team that's obviously about to play for a national championship, kind of talk us through what you're experiencing last night as that Michigan and Alabama game goes down the way it did. It felt like Michigan dominated for stretches of that game and maybe shouldn't have been in a position where it was as close as it was. Obviously, they end up with the victory anyway. How were you processing that as someone who covers that team?
Yeah, I think it was clear to me that they were the better football team,
Mhm.
but a lot of the self-inflicted, a lot of the adversity they dealt with was self-inflicted. And sometimes, Michigan has been so dominant throughout the season, but sometimes throughout the course of the year, you have to kind of get by playing your C plus, your B minus, your B caliber game, and for that to come against Alabama in the Rose Bowl is kind of frightening if you're a Michigan fan. But there's something to be said about this team, this group, that they are, for what my money's worth, they are the most unflappable group of guys that I think I've ever covered. I mean, they do not flinch at all. Obviously, you saw what happened the 3 games to start the year without their head coach. We saw what happened in the 3 games at the end of the year without their head coach. It just hasn't mattered. I mean, anything that's been thrown their way, it's almost like they've kind of just been forged in the fires of that type of adversity. So when you have a team that has such a veteran-laden group like this Michigan group does, and they've seen a little bit of everything. There are guys on this team that were part of that COVID season. There were guys that had been part of these last 2 trips to the college football playoff. And when you've seen everything that you can possibly see at that point, you don't really get scared by that moment. And those guys, to their credit, they locked in. They just worried about making that next play. You're going to make mistakes in the game of football over the course of 60 minutes, but the only thing that ever matters is what happens after you make that mistake. You can't let them snowball. You can't let them bury you. And those guys, like I said, I mean, they played Alabama 4 years ago and held tough and hung in there, and then it was just too much at the end. But this time around, the course of time, they've gotten that championship experience. They've got that unflappable kind of championship mentality, and now they're going to Houston.
Anthony, you got the opportunity to kind of like sit back and relax knowing that Michigan had made it to the national championship and, just watch Texas and Washington face off. If you had your choice, obviously Washington was the winner in that one, but if you had your choice, if you're Michigan, would you have rather seen Washington or Texas in the national championship?
It's tough. I mean, I think either of those teams that played last night could also win a national title. So you kind of just, who's a better matchup for Michigan? I tend to think it probably is Washington. No disrespect to their players intended at all. I mean, I think it's going to be a tremendous game next Monday night. But, Texas kind of has that Southern SEC caliber of talent on their roster. I think they're a deeper team. I think they're a more athletic team. Washington now, they lose their running back last night in the late stages of the game. So, Michael Penix is a problem. He's the type of guy that can win them a game on his own. But you got to think that Michigan pass rush is going to be kind of licking its chops, especially if Washington has to be one-dimensional. And from that perspective, I also think Texas has better defense. At least on paper in terms of what it could give Michigan problems with. So, yeah, I think no question about it. If you're a Michigan fan, I think you're getting the more quote-unquote ideal matchup. But you're the last 2 teams standing. The top 2 seeds in the field, best 2 teams in college football are going to play for a national title on Monday night. So there are no gimmies here. But in terms of who they could have played, I do like what they'll have to deal with against Washington just a little bit better.
We're talking with Anthony Broome of the Wolverine on the On3 Network. Anthony, how big of a difference does having Jim Harbaugh on the field make for Michigan? I know that can seem kind of like a silly question, but there were times this year where Michigan kind of slogged through some of those games without Harbaugh. How much of a difference do you think it actually makes for him to physically be there?
I mean, it's everything for them. And yes, they found a way to win 6 of the games if he wasn't there. But, what he brings is, the detail-oriented approach. Because I guess if you flip on the game film from yesterday's game, you're going to see a lot of errors, especially on special teams. So kind of an outlier game in that regard. But, this team is his fingerprints are obviously all over it. His mentality is all over it. He has dealt with a lot of stuff too, both self-inflicted and things that were thrust upon him. But he has not flinched. He has not flinched in 9 years at Michigan. He has not flinched this season. And this team, as a result, is this is his signature team in terms of that mentality, in terms of, just playing through whatever it is, whether it be suspension to start of the year, sign stealing allegations, whether it be everything, the entire college football world kind of hate watching you. That's always a thing with the University of Michigan. So for me, Jim Harbaugh just brings that, for as frenetic a personality as he can be, he does bring like that calming demeanor on the sidelines. He's that sage mentor voice to a lot of guys, especially a guy like J.J. McCarthy. I didn't think he had his best day in the Rose Bowl, but when he had to, those last few drives of the game, and then obviously in overtime it was all Blake Corum, but that was that next gear for J.J. McCarthy, was locking back in those big moments where Michigan had to have it. In those gotta-have-it situations, Michigan was able to find a way.
Anthony, I have to ask, with all the things swirling around with Jim Harbaugh this year, as you laid out there, do you expect him to be back at Michigan next year?
Man, it's tough. I'll say this. He's been here for 9 years. I've been covering this team for 9 years. The one thing I can safely say about Jim Harbaugh is that nothing with him ever seems to reach its logical conclusion. In fact, it hasn't done so yet. But then again, if they find a way to go out and they're fortunate enough to win a national title next week, and obviously interesting subplot with that is that national title game also on the same day as NFL's Black Monday, so you're going to know what type of jobs are open. Would it be a surprise if they won it all and he decided to, pack up shop and head back to the NFL? No, I don't think it would be. At the same time, I think he strikes me as the type of guy that, I really do think that he loves it at the University of Michigan. I think that there's still a really good chance that he retires from the profession as the coach at the University of Michigan, but I really do think all options are on the table. It's really tough to plant a flag in what you think Jim Harbaugh is going to do. I've learned that's a futile exercise.
Anthony, you obviously the second half of that semifinal game was where everybody saw Michigan struggle the most to move the football. What adjustments need or can be made so something like that doesn't happen again in the national championship? Is that something you prepare for, or is that like an in-moment thing at say halftime that this team needs to do a better job of coming out and not allowing to happen twice?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, you tip your hat to the Alabama defense. I thought that those guys got pushed around a little bit early on, and they were able to find a way to lock in. They made their adjustment. Like I said before, I don't think J.J. McCarthy played his best game of the year by any stretch of the imagination. You want things to be a little sharper there. He overthrew some guys. Play calling at times was a little bit wonky. I thought they were having a lot of success hitting the edges, and then all of a sudden they just stopped hitting those edges. So we'll see what type of adjustments need to be made. The one thing that I've seen with J.J. McCarthy throughout his Michigan career, he's not a guy that typically repeats mistakes. So I have to think they're going to go back in the lab this week, iron a lot of things out, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him have one of his best games of the season against Washington next week. But again, it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But they found a way, and champions have to find a way, and you got to survive and advance, and Michigan was able to do that.
Anthony Broome from the Wolverine, part of the On3 Sports Network. Anthony, thank you so much for your time. Go get some sleep and rest up for next week.
We sleep in February.
Yes, sir.
Anthony Broome from the Wolverine. Thank you, Anthony. We will catch up again soon. That is the show for today. For Andrew Rogers, I'm Ravi Lulla, Shane Schillerberg producing. This has been Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln.